Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Close that door.
Is it on now? Yeah. There we go. I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the City of Milton Planning Commission. I am Peyton Jamison, Chairman. This is a 7-member commission appointed by the City of Milton Mayor and City Council, created for the purpose of holding public hearings and making recommendations on rezoning, use permits, concurrent variance applications, comprehensive land use plan and plan map and other related plans, and amendments to the zoning ordinance. I'm going to introduce the other commissioners. To my left is Fred Edwards, Gabriel Burchett, Paul Moore, and to my right is Chris Duddy, Mark Bittner, and Noel Carpenter. The petitions will be heard in the sequence listed on the posted agenda. I would like to acquaint you with some of the rules and procedures conducting this meeting. The applicant and all those speaking in support of an application will be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present the petition. The applicant may choose to save some of the time for rebuttal following the presentation by the opposition. The opposition will be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present its position. If time remains, the opposition will be allowed to rebut. Since the burden of proof is upon the applicant will be allowed to make closing remarks provided time remains with the allotted time. The staff of the Community Development Department will be keeping track of time and will inform you periodically of the remaining time for your presentation. Each speaker must fill out a speaker card before speaking and leave it with a staff member of the Community Development Department. All speakers will identify themselves by name, address, and organization, if applicable, before beginning their presentation. When an opponent of a rezoning action is made within 2 years immediately preceding the filing of the rezoning action being opposed, campaign contributions aggregating $250 or more to a local government official of the local government which will consider the application, it shall be the duty of the opponent to file a disclosure with the governing authority of the respective local government at least 5 days prior to the Planning Commission meeting. A violation of the relevant state statute constitutes a misdemeanor. Therefore, if you have contributed $250 or more to a council member and you have not filed a disclosure prior to the Planning Commission meeting, the city attorney strongly suggests that you have someone else speak for your point of view. Each application has been properly filed with the Department of Community Development. Signs have been posted on each site. The matter has been advertised, and the notices have been mailed to property owners affected by this zoning, as required by the Milton Zoning Ordinance. The Planning Commission's recommendation will be forwarded to the City of Milton Mayor and City Council for final disposition. The Mayor and City Council hearing will be held approximately 3.5 weeks from this hearing on the third Monday of each month at 6 p.m. in the Council chambers. The Community Development Department has reviewed each application in conjunction with the various agencies and departments, both internal and external, to the city. Staff's recommendations, findings, and conclusions are here before us in written form, which has been made available to all petitioners and to the public. Demonstration of any sort within the chamber is prohibited, so please refrain from any applause, dialogue with the person speaking, or outbursts. Please turn off all cell phones or place them on silent. All remarks will be addressed by the Planning Commission. Please show the same respect to the person speaking that you will expect to receive yourself. In addition, the applicant shall not submit material to the Planning Commission during the meeting, unless requested to do so by the Commission. All material that you wish to be reviewed by the Commission in consideration of your application should be submitted to the staff of the Community Development Department to be included in the normal distribution of packages to the Commission. Finally, to the applicant, if your petition is deferred in accordance with the Milton Zoning Ordinance, you are required to update or obtain a new sign for reposting. Failure to update or repost will result in further delay. There are no exceptions. With that, I'm going to call for public comment. That is anything that is not on the posted agenda that you would like to speak about. So anything that is not on the agenda. Do we have any public comment?
No, we don't.
Okay.
I move we close public comment.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Approval of the action minutes from January 28th.
I move we approve the. Sorry, go ahead. I move we approve the action minutes of January 28th Planning Commission meeting as posted.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. And what's next? Election of chairman and vice chairman.
If you'd like, Mr. Chair, I would be glad to conduct the election.
Sounds good.
Okay. I'd like to open the floor for nominations for the position of Chair of the Planning Commission.
I'd like
I
to
nominate Peyton Jameson.
I'll second that.
Are there any other nominations?
I move it be closed.
Thank you. Can I have a second on that, please?
Second.
And would you all vote on closing the nomination?
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Okay. I'd next like to propose the name of Peyton Jameson as chair. Can I have a motion, please?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of Peyton Jameson as the chair of the Planning Commission, please vote.
Aye.
Okay. Congratulations. Okay, I'd like to
Thank you.
open the floor for nominations for the position of vice chair.
I nominate Paul Moore for vice chairman. I'll second that.
Are there any other nominations? Can I have a motion to close nominations, please?
So moved.
Okay, would you vote on that, please? All in favor of closing nominations for vice chair, please signify by raising your hand. I would like to submit the name of Paul Moore as vice chair for the Planning Commission. I have a motion on that, please.
Motion.
Okay, I'd like a vote. All in favor, please raise your hands. Unanimous. Thank you very much. Paul, congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks, Fred.
Okay. Robin, you.
Yes,
Good.
so I was gonna ask, Chair to move an item that is being requested to be withdrawn. It's RZ 14-15, VC 14-04, 3501 Bethany Bend by Bajan American Properties LP to rezone from AG1 and TR to TR to develop 77 townhomes on 10.17 acres. And if you could move that to the front before number 1, U15-01.
Okay. We have a motion on that?
I have a question first.
Okay.
We're still just working on moving it forward, or we're gonna discuss the issue first?
We're going to discuss the issue.
After you move it,
Yeah.
okay.
Do we have a motion to move that forward?
I move that we move it forward to the.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, Robin.
The applicant has requested a withdrawal of the petition that I just called out. The applicant is also here for any questions that you might have. The letter, I believe, I forwarded to you yesterday, requesting withdrawal without prejudice, and that is, at this point in time, staff's presentation. So if you,
Okay.
I can have the applicant come up if you have any questions for them.
All right. Would the applicant like to come up and say anything?
Wendy Butler, the address is 1359 Brawley Circle. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. Submitted the letter to withdraw the application. We just want to spend some more time really understanding this. It's been a long process, and the initial deferral was some problem with public notice. And then last month we had the inclement weather. So it seems like it's been a very long process. We have had a number of community meetings and decided after meeting with the staff and others and having the recommendation that we had of denial that from the staff, that it was better to take some more time and evaluate the development on the property and what makes the most sense. So with that in mind, I contacted the city as much as 2 weeks ago, had a number of meetings letting them know our intent to withdraw. We also updated our public participation notice by sending out notices to everybody within a quarter of a mile indicating the intent to withdraw the application. So I'd be happy to answer any questions and respectfully ask that you support the withdrawal of the application.
Thank you. Is there anyone in opposition?
Not that, that have submitted for cards.
Is there anyone in opposition to this? Okay. That will close public comment. Questions for the applicant or staff?
I just have one question for staff. How many, It says on our agenda that this is deferred. Is it deferred or withdrawn?
Well, it had been deferred, and then we had the inclement weather, when it was supposed to be heard in February. And so then, because of the inclement weather, the meeting was canceled, and so then it was just pushed, to this meeting. And then at which time that Ms. Butler had said that they wanted to ask for a withdrawal, so they're asking for withdrawal. And if that's your preference or vote, then it'll go on to City Council for their vote for withdrawal. We can't just drop it. It has to go through the gauntlet to be withdrawn.
I get it. And what are the rules for reapplying once something is withdrawn?
They can do it any time. It's only at which time that if there was a denial at the City Council, that it's a year to wait, or 6 months if it substantially changes, or if they substantially change their proposal. But in this case, it won't, it doesn't matter. They can come back next
The
month
next
if they
month
wanted to.
and get it ready
Yes.
and go with it. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Any other questions for staff? Then I will open it up for a motion.
I move we accept the withdrawal of RZ 14-15 VC 14-04.
I'll second that.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Okay, Robin, next item.
Okay, the next item is U 15-01, U 15-02, and VC 15-01 Hopewell Road by Georgia Cumberland Association. Oh, okay. Must be. Okay, now can you hear me?
Nope.
Why don't you, make it higher so you can talk into it.
Can you hear us? Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, have to be right on top of it, sorry. So basically, it's the Georgia Cumberland Association of Seventh-day Adventists to develop a 37,500 square foot church within 4 buildings with a maximum number of 600 seats, which actually has been amended and will be presented within the staff report, and a 13,000 square foot private school for pre-K through 8th grade with a maximum of 90 students, which has been reduced to 60 students. A concurrent variance to reduce the 75-foot undisturbed buffer and 10-foot improvement setback with some changes to that, which will also be presented. Ms. Field will present the staff report for you.
Thank you. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning Commission, you have, on your first slide, you have outlined in red the site. The current zoning for this site is AG1. The future land use map shows this area to be developed for agriculture, equestrian, estate, residential. This is a copy of the revised site plan submitted on March 17th. And I've got 2 slides showing renderings, the proposed renderings of the church. This slide shows the front and the side elevations. The second slide shows the rear and the other side elevation. The subject site, as I mentioned, is zone AG1 agricultural, and it's currently developed with an equestrian farm with accessory structures on 10.142 acres. The proposed requests are to develop a 37,500 square foot church within 4 buildings with a maximum number of 490 seats. Also to develop a 13,000 square foot private school for pre-K through 8th grade with a maximum of 60 students. The proposal requests a concurrent variance to reduce the 75-foot undisturbed buffer and 10-foot improvement setback to a 25-foot undisturbed buffer and a 10-foot improvement setback along the east property line, and to a 50-foot undisturbed buffer and 10-foot improvement setback along a portion of the north property line as shown on the site plan. Based on the applicant's revised site plan, the revised letter of intent submitted to the Community Development Department on March 17th, staff offers the following considerations. We have analyzed the Use permit development standards for a church, and you can see in the first column are the required standards, and the second column responds to whether or not the applicant meets the standard. And the applicant meets the first three standards. In terms of the fourth one, which deals with the buffers and landscape strips, they do not meet the standard, and therefore they've asked for a concurrent variance, which we will discuss later. Again, on this page, a continuation of an analysis of the development standards. You will see that the applicant essentially meets all the standards, except for essentially B2, which again deals with the buffer and setback requirements. They do not meet this, and this is part of the variance request that we'll be discussing shortly. The Rural Milton Overlay District, the proposed site plan meets the requirements of the Rural Milton Overlay District as required pursuant to Section 64-1143, except for the following requested concurrent variance. And before we get to the variance, let me just say that the city arborist comments are as follows. The site is fairly densely vegetated with a good mix of oak trees and pine trees. 90% of the southern undisturbed buffer and 100% of the rural viewshed along Hopewell Road is sufficient to meet the buffering and viewshed requirement. The approximate 500 feet of the rear and approximate 230 feet of the side rear buffer does not meet the buffer requirements. And therefore, the request for the concurrent variance. The applicant is requesting a concurrent variance to reduce the 75-foot undisturbed buffer and 10-foot improvement setback to a 25-foot undisturbed buffer and 10-foot improvement setback along the east property line, and to a 50-foot undisturbed buffer and 10-foot improvement setback along a portion of the north property line, as shown on the revised site plan of March 17th. Although the applicant has a letter indicating support from the Seven Gables Farm to the east to reduce the undisturbed buffers, it is staff's opinion that the applicant has not demonstrated that the concurrent variance is not self-imposed. Furthermore, it's staff's opinion that when Phase 2 of the church is developed, it will be necessary to provide the undisturbed buffer to reduce the light and noise coming from the activities on the site. Therefore, staff recommends denial of VC 15-01. In terms of public involvement, there was a community information meeting held on February 24th. The applicant was present, and the meeting was held at Milton City Hall. There were 23 members of the community in attendance, and the following issues were brought up at the meeting. First, they were concerned that the rural viewshed would be impacted negatively. They did not like the entrance to the church right across from the Greystone Farm subdivision. They did not like the long-range plan for a maximum of 600-seat sanctuary and 90-student school. Felt there was too much traffic if developed as shown. Felt the development's impact on neighbors to the south regarding stormwater runoff and possible flooding of Hopewell Road would be adverse. That the buildings were too close to Hopewell Road, and there was potential to rent to other churches on other days of the week. This application was also reviewed by the City of Milton Design Review Board. It was a courtesy review held on March 3rd, and the following comments were made at that meeting. The DRB wanted to maintain the rural viewshed in its natural state. Pertaining to the noise level, they recommended no external public address systems. That the lighting should be per the night sky ordinance and perhaps further restrict the lighting based on the time of the day. For the protection of the people on the south property line, to increase buffer by width or density to screen the parking. In continuation of that, to rework the parking lot in Phase 1 to move it back from the 75-foot buffer, providing minimum impact for the Garrisons and McMasters. Parking should be screened to reduce the amount of light and cars that are at the adjacent property C. Move also that further administration move that future administration building in order to place parking there. Move the dumpster closer to the road so that the smell does not travel downwind and that the noise of the truck will cause as little disturbance as possible. Considerations for the use permit. The proposed development is located in the agricultural equestrian estate residential land use category on the City of Milton's 2030 comp plan. The proposed use permits for a church and private school are permitted in the AG1 agricultural district, which is an acceptable zoning district for the AEE land use category. In addition, the following plan policy is consistent with the proposed uses. And that policy reads, "We will encourage development that is sensitive to the overall setting of the community and will contribute to our community's character and sense of place." The subject site is located on the southeast side of Hopewell Road. The Seven Gables Farm, zoned AG1, is located to the east. Sunnybrook Farm subdivision is located to the south, zoned AG1, and developed with large estate lots. Greystone Farm subdivision is located to the northwest, zoned CUP, which is the community unit plan, and is approved for a minimum of 1 acre lots. In addition, there are scattered single-family residences along the northwest side of Hopewell, zoned AG1. It is staff's opinion that the proposed church and private school is compatible with adjacent and nearby properties if approved with the recommended conditions. Therefore, staff recommends approval conditional of U15-01 and U15-02. The proposed use's effect on the traffic flow, vehicular and pedestrian along adjoining streets should be mitigated with the recommended location of the entrance on the eastern portion of the site. Conditions related to the traffic, the limited days that the property is utilized, and the proposed size of the church and private school. Parking. The required number of parking spaces is 1 space per 3.5 seats. Based on Phase 1, which is proposed for 249 seats, a total of 72 spaces are required. There are 75 spaces required, of which 3 are handicapped. For Phase 2, a total of 490 seats are proposed, which requires 140 parking spaces, of which 8 should be handicapped. There are a total of 104 spaces provided in Phase 2 for a total of 179 spaces. The private school requires 2 parking spaces per classroom. There will be 4 classrooms, which require a total of 8 parking spaces. Since the school will be operating when the church is not, the existing spaces can be utilized. The proposed number of parking spaces exceed the required number by 39 spaces. Staff recommends that the site plan be revised to reflect the needed number of spaces and/or construct the outlining parking spaces with alternative pervious materials. Protective screening. The rural Milton overlay requires a larger buffer than the use permits for the church and private school. Therefore, a 75-foot undisturbed buffer and 10-foot improvement setback adjacent to all interior property lines are required. The applicant has requested a concurrent variance to reduce a portion of these undisturbed buffers, but staff recommends denial based on the fact that there is not a hardship that is not self-imposed, and that due to the potential intensity of the site and its effect on adjacent properties in the future, the entire 75-foot undisturbed buffer is needed to ameliorate the church and school activities from the adjacent properties. Hours of operation for the church. Saturdays, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., Wednesdays, 7:30 p.m. to 9 p.m., various unscheduled evening meetings, and a Sunday rental, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. For the school, the hours are Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. It is staff's opinion that the above-mentioned hours of operation are reasonable for the proposed uses. Ingress and egress to the property. Although the site plan indicates an entrance in front of Greystone Farm subdivision, staff recommends that it be relocated to the eastern portion of the site, approximately where the existing gravel driveway is located. This will further allow preservation of the 60-foot rural view shed along Hopewell Road. Conclusion. If approved with the recommended conditions, the proposed church and private school are consistent with the City of Milton 2030 future land use plan and policies. Therefore, staff recommends U15-01 and U15-02 be approved conditional. Additionally, staff recommends VC 15-01 be denied. Now, in terms of the actual recommended conditions, 1, to the owner's agreement to restrict the use of the subject property as follows. A 37,500 square foot church and recreation building within 3 buildings with a maximum number of 490 seats. B, a 13,000 square foot private school for pre-K through 8th grade with a maximum number of 60 students. C, the hours of operation shall be the following. Church Saturdays 9 to 1, Wednesday 7:30 to 9 p.m., various unscheduled evening meetings, Sunday rental 9 to 1. School Monday through Friday 8 to 3:30. To the owner's agreement to abide by the following, to the revised site plan received by the Community Department on March 17, 2015. Said site plan is conceptual only and must meet or exceed the requirements of the zoning ordinance, all other applicable city ordinances, and these conditions prior to the approval of a land disturbance permit. To To the owner's agreement to the following site development considerations. All parking spaces in excess of 140 parking spaces shall be constructed of pervious all-weather materials as approved by the Public Works Director. To the owner's agreement to abide by the following requirements, dedication, and improvements. Dedicate at no cost to the City of Milton prior to the approval of the land disturbance permit. Sufficient land is necessary to provide the following. 1. Access to the site shall meet City of Milton Code of Ordinances and AASHTO guidelines and subject to the approval of the Milton Public Works Department. 2. Provide bicycle and pedestrian improvements along entire property frontage of Hopewell Road according to Chapter 48, streets, sidewalks, and other public places, and Chapter 50 subdivision of the City of Milton Code of Ordinances. Also included would be that the back of the sidewalk shall be no more than 1 foot inside the proposed right-of-way. Installation, modification of the following transportation infrastructure according to Chapter 48, streets, sidewalks, and other public places. That 1, northbound right turn lane on Hopewell Road at New Site Driveway, and the southbound left turn lane on Hopewell Road at New Site Driveway be installed. And 5, to the owner's agreement to abide by the following. A stormwater management concept plan shall be submitted and approved by the Milton Public Works Department prior to the submission of a land disturbance permit. And that is my presentation.
Thank you. Any questions for Kathy regarding the presentation before we ask the applicant? All right, I'll have the applicant come up.
Hi, good evening. I'm Pastor Rusty Williams. I'm representing the applicant as pastor of the Seventh-day Adventist Church here in Milton, and the applicant is Georgia Cumberland Association.
Will you state your name, your address too, for the record?
My address is 3945 Spalding Bluff Drive, Peachtree Corners, Georgia 30092.
Thank you.
You know, we've been here as members of the City of Milton for almost 10 years. June 11, we are going to celebrate 10 years. We've been renting from another church on 3315 Francis Road, Milton, Georgia 30004. We've got about 127 members. Of that, we have 86 that live in the Milton, Alpharetta, Roswell area. Of that, there are 35 members of the Georgia Cumberland Association that actually live in the city of Milton. We want to be a positive contribution to the community. We want to be a blessing. We're a family-oriented church. We request to follow all the City of Milton codes that you have outlined there. We've been listening to the community and their concerns. They talked about, as was mentioned earlier, traffic and screening and things like that. We've actually, put more thought into some of the numbers in the original request, the 600 and the 90 student school. We were asked by the City of Milton what we saw in 25, 30 years, and the closer we looked at it and listening to the applicants, we lowered that to 490 and 60 student school. We think that will be certainly adequate. At this point, we have about 100 to 120, 25 attending. We've also are open to moving the entrance as suggested. We were told to put it across from Fox Solar Drive. It was that was what the staff recommended. And as we've looked at the traffic study and talked with neighbors, we were certainly open, but we wanted to put it in the safest place possible. Looking at the traffic report, even though we don't want to pay for it, we do feel safer with a turn lane and a decel lane as is listed in the recommendation there. The only thing that I would like to say is regarding the variance, it wasn't our intention to move the setback line, just the buffer. I know that may not make sense, but it was only the buffer that we were talking about, not the setback. We've, in all of our plans, shown staying within that 75-foot line there. That is just a minor point. In speaking with the Garsons, it looks like you've noted an item on here. They're beautiful people, wonderful people. As I stood in the back of their yard, I could not see where they would actually see the parking lot. If it makes any sense, they could probably see a car sitting in the parking lot. From that angle, they couldn't see that. So the idea of increasing that from 75 feet, I don't know how that would help in any way. they're still not going to be able to see the parking lot. But we have agreed between us to, provide adequate screening on the edge of that buffer to be able to work that out, and we've answered all of their stormwater concerns. So just noting that, we're listening, and that's all I've got. So you have any questions for me?
We're going to let the opposition speak first,
Sure.
and then we'll open up for questions.
Very good. Thank you for your time.
Do I have, are there any more cards for the opposition? I know some people come in. Okay, we have quite a few cards. The first person is Ed Richardson.
Good evening. My name's Ed Richardson. I live in Greystow subdivision at 105 Fox Hollow Trail. I'm the second house from the entrance off Hopewell Road, and I oppose the building of a school and church on this proposed property due to the following. The stretch of Hopewell Road already has an abundance of traffic, and we cannot afford any additional traffic which this school and church would bring to this area. There would be an increased traffic safety hazard due to the limited visibility that exists from the Seven Gables Farm to Greystone subdivision. This currently is a blind entrance, or a blind curve. If a school and church were built on this property, it would be very dangerous for cars entering and exiting on a Hopewell Road, especially due to the volume of traffic that already exists. Incidentally, a majority of the vehicles traveling on this stretch of road are driving faster than the posted speed limit, which is dangerous and currently limits our ability to enter and exit out of our own subdivision now. I would encourage each of you on the council to come to Greystone subdivision entrance and see firsthand the traffic hazards that currently exist, plus envision the impact of this school and church which would create on the stretch of road, especially morning and afternoon traffic. Additionally, a variance of the setback should not be approved to appease a potential new owner so they can construct a building that really should be built on a larger piece of property. If every potential owner asked for a variance so they could construct a facility that is larger than what the property could handle, we would not be unique. And just like other communities that surround Milton, such as Roswell and Johns Creek, we moved to this community due to the rural standards that Milton is to protect. As a taxpayer, I expect the council members not to allow construction of this school and church to uphold Milton's rural values, not only for the residents that currently live in Milton, but for future residents as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Ed Grzinski.
Robin, how many cards are there total? How many cards are there total?
Ready?
We have 5 more.
Okay, just want to make sure we watch time.
Hello, I'm Ed Grzinski. I live at 840 Fox Hollow Run in the Greystone subdivision. I oppose this petition and permit in its entirety. There's a letter that I wrote that is contained in the staff report. I'm not going to go through that all again. If anyone wants a copy of it, I have brought along copies. What I did want to do is introduce a couple of new bits of information. This is a list of 102 signatures on a petition that is in opposition to this project. That number is now up to 104. It just wasn't on this printout, and it also attached here are 54 comments from people who have signed the petition, and if you guys would like copies of that, I'm happy to provide that. The other thing is I am aware that that an alternative offer has been made on the property by an individual who intends to build a single home and maintain its equestrian nature, and I don't know that that makes much bearing, but I do believe that that would be a use that would be far more consistent within this community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Robin Frichter.
Yes, I'm Robin Frichten. I live at 2970 Francis Road. I've lived in Milton for over 30 years. I have seen the traffic. I know the traffic. I'm on the road at 6 a.m. I know what it's like coming and going. We really do not need any schools or churches on that road. We have plenty of churches and schools and land available down on Cogburn, around the high schools and all the churches that are already down there. But that road, Hopewell Road, is pretty dangerous. I mean, it's lots of blind curves, a lot of speeding people. It's, we are AG1, but this is residential and farms. There are no churches on that side of the road. There are on Francis Road, okay? But I've seen it all. I fought the landfill and other things up here. I'm getting kind of tired of fighting. But the church and the school would not fit into what we have in that area. This is a rural area. I don't think Milton wants to become the school and church of all the other cities or counties. Okay, and my understanding is I don't see any economical reason to do it. If I understand the tax codes and everything, churches don't pay taxes on property. And, we need as many taxes as we can. We got enough high school property, churches property already, that don't pay anything. And economically, all they do is crowd the roads up. And if you've lived up here and you've been on Cogburn in the afternoon or in the morning, you'll see how clogged it is right now. Hopewell's not bad at all right now, but with the school and the church, it's going to be a madhouse. So if please stop your decision, and let's go back and let somebody else buy it that will make it a home or a farm. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Michael McAlpin.
My name is Michael McAlpin. I live at 2380 Saddle Springs Drive in the Sunnybrook subdivision, and I am opposed to this project. I was gratified this morning to read both Milton newspapers and Mayor Lockwood's comments regarding the moratorium that was passed yesterday by the council. He's quoted as saying, "The important thing to realize in all this is that we remain, as a city council, committed to preserving and enhancing our rural characteristic." Having said that, the City of Milton has gone through an exhaustive process to develop the City of Milton Comprehensive Plan. I actually had the opportunity and honor to be on the Citizens Advisory Committee for that. This plan sought community input, sent out 12,000 surveys, received input from the city staff, reviewed best practices from other similarly situated cities, and it was approved by the City Council and finally presented to the community as a guidepost. The plan specifically calls this area of Hopewell Road a viewshed, which is defined as the characteristic pastoral view that can be seen along the roads as one travels through Milton. Rural viewsheds contribute to the rural character and sense of place of the city of Milton. The bucolic, scenic qualities of many of Milton's roads are considered to be character-defining features within several of the larger character areas, and concerns have been expressed about maintaining and preserving these viewsheds and the cherished characteristic of Milton. The future development map identifies the roads that should be considered for protection as rural viewsheds. Hopewell Road is one of those identified. Comprehensive plan further states that the appropriate land use in this area is agriculture, equestrian, and estate residential. And it further states that transportation goals for the area should seek solutions that move traffic around the area rather than directing it through it. There is no part of placing a church and a school in a 50,000 plus square foot facility that's consistent with the comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is John Smoltz.
John Smoltz, 700 Fox Hollow, Grayson neighborhood. I want to echo Ed and Edward and what they said. I've been part of these processes. I know they're delicate, not opposed to the church, just the location. I'm the one big piece of land that you'll see most directly across the street from where the proposed entrance would be. Lived here 12 years, not 30, but I've seen the growth and I've seen the traffic as well. It's 5 drivers coming through and 5th one on the way. It's not exciting to see what's on that road. I've had the choice to live wherever I want. Hopefully, I'll be living here for the last 40 years in Milton. I enjoy it. And like I said, it's in opposition of the location seems awfully tight, and Greystone, obviously, amongst others, would be affected, and don't want to see an already dangerous road with high speeds get even more dangerous. So, thank you.
Thank you.
The last speaker is George McMaster.
I also also pitch for the Braves a little bit. I'm not as well known, but my name is George McMaster. I live at 2300 Saddle Springs Drive. We were one of the two homes referenced immediately behind this project, and I love churches. I love kids. I'm a pediatric dentist. I love kids. I think it's great to have schools around. Although I am in opposition, it's just what many people have mentioned. The concentration just seems too intense. We've developed a little property, and 10 acres with the setbacks isn't really 10 anymore. It's really 8. We have 4 acres, and I think our house is 4,200 feet. So if we were to put that on this property, you could put something on there that might be 8,000 feet, and they're proposing 50,000 feet, and that doesn't include parking lots, and it doesn't include parking lot commercial lighting. That will be in my wife's eyes for the rest of the time that we're here. We moved out here from Alpharetta. We've been here since '96, like not 30 years, but I guess I'm really just repeating what other people have said. I love churches. I love kids. I would love to have a school. They're great neighbors. The concentration just seems like a high density commercial project is what it seems like, and I feel bad speaking against it, but I think that's where I'll leave it.
Thank you. Is that it, Robin?
Yes, that's it.
Okay. Does the applicant like to come up and rebut any of those comments?
Just a couple of items. Regarding the variance, the whole idea of undisturbed is undisturbed, and there isn't any intention, that's why I mentioned earlier, to do anything in that undisturbed area, but leave it as it is, a horse pasture. And that's what I understand the City of Milton's all about. So I'm just clarifying it. We're actually okay with what the city has done, the way they've written it. We're comfortable with that, but just so you know, we're not trying to put anything in that area. Earlier it was mentioned about a gentleman lived on Francis Road. Well, that's where we go to church. We've been going there for the last 10 years. We're moving 1.9 miles down the road. So just clarifying that. And also to reference Mr. McAlpin, who we appreciate put all that time and effort into the overall comprehensive plan for the City of Milton. On that same page he referenced, it does mention community centers, and there's no place for zoning for a church anywhere from AG1, which we're on, to industrial, except for a community center. And so that is listed on the same page he's referencing in the comprehensive plan. And I think we have Rick Mosley. He's also our our building chair, and I think he has a card turned in.
Yes, he does. If he wants to speak, he can.
Thanks, Rob. Rick Mosley, 4335 Old Oak Trace. Thank you for your few minutes. I am the building chairman for our group. And while I understand the community's in opposition to it, I want to tell you a couple things why I think a community center is good for the neighborhood. Disaster relief. It's not uncommon if we've had tornadoes in our area, things to congregate, voting rights, an area to vote. A church can also be used as a common area for things like Vacation Bible School with outreach to our children. Medical fairs and health screening, that's not uncommon. We've actually had that. We have 5 or 6 doctors that are in our congregation that have a practice here in Milton with significant tax-paying dollars that they're contributing already to the county, and they'll continue to do the things we've done in the past, which is having health screening and health fairs, things like that. So we think the church is a good thing. One thing I want to point on is the traffic issue. One thing about the traffic is, as having a 16-year-old daughter myself who will be driving potentially to this area, traffic is a concern for me as well. And I think that by having a particular entity on a piece of property that goes reverse of traffic, meaning it's on the weekend, it's on a morning, it's not your typical 6:30 to 8 traffic patterns, that's a good thing. So it's not heavy residential. You're going to see cars coming and going, getting groceries, taking kids back and forth. It's a segregated time in the mornings on a weekend. In reference to the school, it's taken us 10 years to kind of get to the point we're at there now. I don't know if I'll ever see a church school on the property. That was the City of Milton's request, is to have a comprehensive 30-year plan. It's taken 10 years at 130 members to get this far. So we talk about scope and how big and the square footage, and that kind of scares a lot of folks. We're a very small church. You've driven by us, the folks behind us, every single weekend. And the property next door to us is a horse farm, Mr. Bogini's farm, and he has 60 cars that come and go every day for his horse riding stable. So the traffic is already, quote, there. So if it was a horse stable or whether it's a riding ring or whether it's a community church, you're still going to see about the same number of traffic cars. We had 56 at our last week's church, and the sites allowed for 75 cars. So we'd like to your consideration as it is in the zoning and it is approved. It is in the master plan for us to have a church school, but it's definitely nothing that we have budgeted for or in the long-term area. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Any opponents? Have 43 seconds. Have you filled out a comment card? Okay, yeah, you can go fill it out real quick.
Just talking for
Or why don't you come and speak?
Yeah, why don't you come speak and then fill it out later. 43 seconds. All right.
My name is Madison Bolton. I live at 2330. My property is actually directly across from where the church is going to be. I attend church regularly. I'm very happy that they want to do a church. I have a 1,700 square foot covered porch on the front of my house. I don't want to look at the back of a church for the rest of my life. I bought my property for the horse farm, and John's farm's right across the street from me, and the new proposed driveway is right across from my driveway. I've lived across from John for 8 years. There are not 60 cars a day. There may be 60 cars a week, and I have 3 young children, and I'm more scared of my kids witnessing an accident from people flying down Hopewell Road or flying up Hopewell Road. And thank you.
Thank you. Does the applicant like to say any final remarks? Okay. That will close the public comment and open it up for questions to staff and the applicant. Just fire away.
I have one for staff. Robin or Kathy, do we, if I remember correctly, in a residential area, the orientation of the primary structure is supposed to be oriented with the front of the building facing to the road. Is that not a similar standard for?
Yeah,
okay. My question to staff is, in a residential area, our requirements are that the orientation of the building, meaning the residential structure, is to the street. And the orientation of this proposed structure is actually that the side of the building would be to the street. Does staff have any comment on that?
The applicant worked with the city architect for the positioning of it, and actually when they propose to move the entrance, it's going to turn 90 degrees, so it will be, the full front will be toward the street. But just for information, because of the different buildings, the city architect had asked it to be kind of on the skinny side, so there wouldn't be such bulk, facing toward the street. But when the entrance is repositioned further to the east, then the church would turn 90 degrees to be in that way. And the architect was also fine with that, now that there'll be less buildings and such. So.
Thank you.
I have a question for staff. One of the major complaints I hear from the audience is that the traffic on Hopewell Road, and yet we, in our analysis, we say that that it won't have any significant impact. How did we come to that conclusion if what we're hearing is just the opposite?
Well, I think it's based on the traffic, the traffic information that was done as a traffic study, and that the required conditions would ameliorate any traffic that would come to the site.
Yeah, we would have, there would be turning movements into the site that would be requirement. Why is this? Yeah, I know. There are required turning movements into the site that will need to be built by the applicant. And these, of course, are based on traffic counts, which was submitted to us. So based on that there was a determination by our Public Works Department that there was adequate access and egress to the site, and that it would be accommodated.
Along that same line, Kathy, is the study done based on phase 1 or on all of the phases?
It was done on the entire, all phases.
Of 496.
Right.
And actually, it was probably done on 600 because by the time they reduced it, the study was already done, so.
Okay.
But I think they relooked at the numbers that even at 490, it would still require the left turn lane and decel.
Right.
Do we know what the traffic count is on Hopewell and Cogburn? That study, do we have a car number?
I don't have it currently.
Living on there, I can tell you it's plenty.
Okay.
It's 4,000, greater than 4,000.
Thank you.
And you also have to build into that is the times of the day that the church is going to be operating. So I think there was a lot of off-hour times as well. So all that goes into the I'm not a traffic engineer, but I will say that traffic counts, time of day, all go into compiling that study.
Did we actually do a metered count in the assessment of this particular application?
The way it works is that we ask the applicant to do the traffic study, and he has an independent traffic engineer do it, and so there were counts done, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question for the applicant. I see this phase 1, I see the phase 2, and you mentioned phase 2 kind of wasn't on the original plan. That's your long-term plan. Tell me about your long-term goals and plans and what your church size is now and what your growth rate is and all that.
Speaking about the traffic, I think I misspoke. The traffic is 4,900 on one end of the day and 5,100 on another end of the day, according to A&R Engineering that did the traffic study, and that has been turned in. I think it's a 48-page document. At any rate, they required a 115-foot turn lane and 175-foot decel lane, and that is for this when they had the original numbers of 600. They said 135 feet for the turn lane. When I quoted him the other numbers, he basically said 115 would do for both numbers, but it was for the entire plan. Now, when we looked at it, I think everything that is on there is quite reasonable. We've sized it. We've spent quite a bit of money with the civil engineer, so I think our numbers are pretty good, reflecting what could be. And obviously, we're here to follow the City of Milton Code, and to everything would have to be presented before building review.
So, as far as what's your goals, as far as what's your current?
Okay, we have phase 1 is a 250-seat congregation. It has enough room for classrooms and a fellowship hall. People mention about a school and that sort of thing. We have really about the second largest parochial school worldwide. Our membership is just over 1 million in the United States, so much of it is outside in Africa, Asia, and South America. But we have a lot of schools all over the world. We feel that school number represents what could be for this size congregation if it were to grow to 490. We don't know the future. We don't know what that would be, but obviously that's what we're asking for the use permit. There's a gymnasium that is listed there, activity field, and that is everything. If you see the site plan, which I'm seeing down here, that would be our plans.
I didn't see anything related to external exercise or activity fields.
It's just an open field. There's no grandstands. There's no huge after-night lighting. We're comfortable with the city ordinance as far as the night sky lighting. We don't anticipate nighttime games and that sort of thing. It's only for activity during the daytime hours. And another thing on the traffic, I think that we're pretty much as less traffic adding as you can according to the times that we have there. If the rush on a school is going to be right at 8:15, when we said 8, but usually it starts about 8:15. We don't know what that teacher who would name that time, but I mean, if you're getting up to work and leaving to get stuck in that traffic, you're late for work already. So the other hours are pretty well off hours. We schedule our evening meetings because we've got to get there too. I mean, so the traffic, we've done our best to schedule our hours where it doesn't impact us and it wouldn't impact others, as has been suggested.
One of the questions, while you're up there, the commitment to this property, as I understand it, is it under contract to this Mary Catherine Sneed, or what's the position?
That's correct. It is under contract to purchase based upon the use permit and a septic permit by Fulton County.
I'm hearing an inconsistent message, and I'd like to see if I can get it clarified. In one part of the message, I'm hearing we don't have any plan for schools, we don't have any plan for athletics, our church size today doesn't call for those things, and yet in the other side of the message is we've got to set aside for athletic fields, and there's a gymnasium. I don't see the athletic fields on here. Can you help me clarify how does that? There's two messages I'm getting at.
Okay, well, I forgive me. I think the gymnasium is located on that document. If it's not, then it might be on another one.
Future recreation. There's a 10,000 square foot
There you
building.
go, right there. And next to that is an open field, and that is all we're talking about. Leaving it open. There's not a plan for, anything other than an open field. I'm sorry if that's inconsistent, but that's all that we really have plans for. I mean,
so do you run a school today out of the current facility?
my wife is a teacher for first and second grade, and we do run a school in Dunwoody, Georgia. There's a 700-member church there. There's 80 students. They would love to have the activity field that they do. They're sitting on 5 acres. And it's been there for 25 years. So
in phase 1, how many students do you think you'll have?
I want to address that because I think I know where you're going with this. In phase 1, we're not putting a school at all. Phase 1 is strictly a sanctuary. The city of Milton required us to look at the master plan. We have no finances. We have no intention of building phase 1. To give you a clear message, the phase 1 is just the sanctuary with fellowship rooms. Okay. And to answer your question, I can't answer it, but the reason we're coming and we're lumping this under one something is because 10 years from now, 20 years from now, I can't tell you when, if we wanted to have a school, we wanted the city's blessings that we'd have property that we could add on to.
Yeah, so you're just trying to get the use permit
that's
today
the only
instead
reason.
Of waiting and see what happens.
That's right. And again, keep in mind, it took us 10 years to go from, you're asked about growth rate, I think it was Peyton, from 0 to 124 members in 10 years. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And I guess to staff, even if they're granted the use permit for the school, what else would they have to go through to start building, land disturbance, everything else? We're not approving anything other than a use permit, right?
That's correct, and then everything, all the buildings would have to go before the design review board and has to meet the overlay requirements, and they also speak about septic. I think there are some limitations based on the room that's left over for leach fields and other things. So
right.
I think that's part of the reason why they were able to reduce the amount of church and school is because of what was available for a septic, so as well as drainage. So, we asked them to come in with their master plan so that it's staff's opinion that we want the community to understand what's potentially could happen in the future.
Right.
So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Question for staff, and this might be a dumb question. I know you want to deny the variance request, but the gravel road now. Maybe I'm looking at the site plan. The gravel road is now going to be the main entrance. Is that correct?
Yes, and they, Robin, why don't you speak to the revised site plan that way?
So when this was discussed, it was a little late, the 9th hour, and so we expect a revised site plan prior to the city council meeting, so they'll have the appropriate site plan. I'm not sure exactly where, the entrance is going to come in. That'll have to be engineered. If there is a need to put the road through the buffer, they would have to go through the Board of Zoning Appeals to ask for a variance to that buffer.
Okay.
So best case right now is a 10,000 square foot building on 10 acres in phase 1.
Correct.
Okay.
And also just for information, I mean, the use permit runs in perpetuity with the land. So, I mean, just because they're only building part of it, it still stays, you know,
Right.
active in perpetuity, as well as if they ever sold it to another entity, it would stay with the land.
Yeah, it's a key factor. You've got a small church coming in at this point that may or may not be able to fulfill their long-term vision.
Oh, yeah.
And then the use permit stays with the land. We have to take that into consideration.
I guess that was going to be a follow-up. Let's say the church doesn't work out and a new church comes in, is that correct? It's, the use
Right.
permit stays?
It stays there. I mean, obviously, if they don't like some of the timing of the, you know, if there's conditions that don't satisfy their needs, then they would have to come in for what's called a zoning modification directly to the city council to adjust the conditions. So,
It's only for a church. So if the church sold it to somebody else that wanted to use it for a different purpose,
well, if it's a different purpose, then
Completely
that different
completely
purpose may
different
not
purpose.
work,
Yeah.
but it would only be for the church and the private school. I mean, I guess one could just do a private school with that
just school by
square
itself,
footage.
yeah.
Yes,
and that would be okay?
yes. Because there are two different use permits. You see, it's U 15-01 and U 15-02, and even though there's a lot of concurrency with the discussion, they are actually two separate use permits, and they can stand alone. And that is very typical that actually, even in commercial zones, there's a use permit required for private schools. For churches, there aren't in the commercial area, but it is for all residential districts. You know, use permits for churches are permitted with a use permit pretty much everywhere except for
Right.
manufacturing.
Right.
Sir, with your hand up, we usually, we don't call on people, so.
What's public?
Yeah, once public comment's closed, that's it. He's the applicant. We have any other questions for staff or?
Well, I guess I have one for the applicant. Would you be opposed to removing or withdrawing your use permit for the church or for the school?
Would I be opposed to withdrawing the use permit for the school?
Right.
You know, as I mentioned before, it's kind of in our DNA, and that's why we're asking for it at this point.
Okay.
While the property's under contract. We're comfortable with the document that you've been given. You know, it looks like they've denied the variance, and that's fine. We're going to live with that. We actually like the way it was written. I will say that on the southeast corner, though, there's a lot more trees that are shown there, and so I think we're going to be talking with the arborist a little bit more about that. But we obviously want to follow the code and the screening, and we have no trouble with that.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions before I'll open up for a motion, but if y'all want to discuss it.
I think we should discuss it at this point.
Yeah, I mean, well, we can always do a motion second, and then we can discuss that motion.
For the sake of discussion, I'll put a motion forward. I move that we deny U 15-01, U 15-02, and VC 15-01.
I second it.
We got a motion on the floor and a second. I'd like to have a little discussion on that.
In my mind, there are too many unknown factors at this point. We've got a presentation here that, in my mind, although it's fitting within the buffers, is a case of about 10 pounds of activity and 10 pounds of building on a 5-pound lot. And although their plans call for these things to be built in the future, we have to consider those things. We are concerned about our community's growth. And although the use of a church in an AG1 land is not inconsistent with what we are as a city, I find the lack of definition for some concrete plans to be unsettling for me personally, and that's the reason for my recommended denial.
And I'll say I'm perfectly fine with phase one, perfectly fine with that. But with the unknowns and the intensity of these buildings, that's where my concern is. So I would be okay with approving it just for phase one, and that's it. But that's my opinion, and that's
That's
a
what's
motion
mine.
on motion on the table is to not deny it entirely.
Yeah, that's the problem, is right now, the application is for what we've seen before us as presented. I also would go back to the comment that I made earlier that was, I'm not sure how it was brought up, but we did have a comment or two made on it, and that is that we have to take it for face value today, that it's this entity that's coming before us. We also can't plan for their success or for their failure, but we need to make sure that we are cautious when we are measuring those things. A use permit granted on this property, regardless of their success, does stay with the property. And heaven forbid there's failure, that use permit is there ongoing, and a larger entity could come in and settle into the property and execute the rest of the plan that could have a lot more repercussion than what we're seeing today, and the fact that they could present something that's significantly different, and we don't know what that would look like, but the use permit would already be in place. So we don't have all the safeguards to stop that. And I'm concerned for the community that has shown up in mass this evening with a significant presence of signatures. Although I haven't seen those, I take it for face value that those have merit, and I'm willing to listen to the voice of the community.
Any other discussion on the motion?
I got just a couple of comments that, based on what I guess the community leaders in that particular area have said, and I'm supporting the denial of it as well, but just based on the fact that what Mr. Fritkin said about growth in the area and the economic, I guess the effect on the tax base, where it's not adding to us unless somebody's got something to the contrary of that. I believe that as well. And I don't think it's in support of our comprehensive plan in interrupting the view shed in that particular area. And the amount of impervious surfaces that we're going to add in that particular area, it may work, and it may be meet the requirements of runoff and other things. But as far as what I can see, I would not suggest putting a semi-commercial type of activity in this rural area right there. It just doesn't make sense on what we are supporting right now in the city.
Any other discussion?
I don't believe it is sensitive to the overall setting of the community, and I don't think it's part of the community's character and sense of place where it's at, where they're proposing it.
Okay. Well, we have a motion and a second. I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor of Commissioner Moore's denial? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose?
Aye.
So 5-2.
Motion carries.
And Robin, we call the next item.
The next item is RZ 15-02, text amendment to Chapter 64, Article 20, Deerfield Form-Based Code to amend standards and increase.
Excuse me, y'all.
5 minutes.
If y'all can
Take 5 minutes.
have your conversation outside, that'd be great. Thank you. Okay. Go, Robin.
Okay, and increase the geographical area to include areas within the Highway 9 North visioning study. So, as you know, back in February, we had a joint workshop with the Design Review Board. Caleb Rassico was present to do a presentation, an overview of what the items were in the Deerfield as well as Crabapple. So I may go through this, and many of the changes were done concurrently to both ordinances. So just as a background, these two smart codes focused on form and design. Crabapple was adopted in June of 2012, and Deerfield was adopted in 2013 based on the Crabapple model. Since then, staff has had over 2 years to administer the form-based codes. Generally, they've worked well, but a few areas needed fine-tuning. So I'm going to go through the common revisions, so this will kind of deal with some issues on the Crabapple when we get to there. Transfer of development rights, Section 1.7.3. Update to only allow lots of record existing before January 1, 2015 to be less than 25 acres. Applies only to TDR sending sites. Current language could be interpreted as allowing rural land to be subdivided into small lots under 25 acres and still be eligible as a TDR sending site.
Robin, I'm sorry, can you tell me where you are again, please?
I'm sorry, it would be section, in the TDR section 1.7.3.
What page?
Oh, I'm sorry.
What?
We're on
No,
RZ
I'm
fits
just-
in over too, right?
Okay, if you go to 1.7.3, it is page, at the bottom of page 5 of the marked up. You should have the marked up. The most recent I sent this past week.
Yeah. Yep.
Correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Just out of order.
So it's really page 6. So you see it in A, for lots less than 25 acres in size that have a plat recorded with Fulton County before January 1, 2015. So that's that change there. Could you explain that, why we did that?
Yeah, can you?
Well, basically, we had come upon some situations where people were trying to subdivide the land into smaller parcels and then also be able to take advantage of the TDRs instead of keeping the whole parcel as a whole as what was intended.
Right, because you only have to have 5 acres to
Acres,
qualify. And so we had some inquiries from people who owned more than 5 acres and actually owned 25, which, and wanted to subdivide their parcels into smaller parcels so they could sell off part for a TDR. And so we wanted to close that loophole, so that wasn't.
So I guess continue that example for me. So they've got 25 acres. We are saying to them they can't subdivide, but what can they do in that example? If they've got 25 acres and they want to become a sending area,
25 acre.
what do they have to do with 25 in total?
Yeah.
Or what can they do?
What's the gain?
And you keep your house, and anything over 25 acres, you can put an extra house on there.
25 acres, so 10. You lost me at that.
If you've got 25 acres,
Who cares?
you're allowed to maintain your home. And then anything more than 25 acres, you then are able to put an additional house.
Okay,
for
so
your
26 or 27 or
Right,
28,
exactly
you can
right.
add one more
Right,
residence.
yeah. But the idea was to sort of encourage larger chunks of land by
To be
doing that.
preserved, yes.
But they can't send anything, what's the smallest sending area that they can?
5 acres.
5 acres.
5
threshold.
acres. Is the minimum threshold.
Correct.
So I think that what they were saying was we could subdivide 5 times and then have 5 houses, but we could
Right.
still send the 4.
Right, so are we basically saying to them, and I'm still trying to grasp it, I think I get it in concept. So if they're going to be a sending area, they can send 5. On a 25, if they have 25 acres, they can send 5. But they could send
Any
6
increment
or
of
7
it.
or 8 or 10
Sure,
or 12.
that's right.
But they get one shot at sending?
Well, they would bank it, so if you had 25 acres
You'd
and you
bank it.
only sell, let's say, 3 or 4 TDRs, you still have in the bank the rest of the TDRs to sell to other people that would buy them for additional density.
So this goes back to the units thing. How, the measure of the unit, right?
Well, let's go back to the general concept again. 5 acres, you can have a house on 5 acres.
Uh-huh.
So if you got 25, what we were seeing was inquiries that, well, let's take the 25 and make 5 estate lots,
Right.
5 acres each. Put a house on each one, and they would have TDR development rights.
How
for
much?
as a sending site.
Mhm.
See?
But they would also have each house, so
Right.
they could.
Yes.
So I don't.
Double dip.
Right, they were double dipping. They were creating estate lots that you could put a house on, developable estate lot, which was eligible for TDRs. And
And
so
you
we
could
thought
still-
that sort of went against the intent of the TDR.
Yeah, it does.
Right.
But I guess where I'm still not catching how we close the loophole is if I've got 25 acres and I decide that I'm going to subdivide that into 3 different lots, one's 5 and 2 are 10, what can I do with that? Can I put 3 houses on those 3 and still send?
Well, that's what we're trying to, that's the loophole we're trying to close.
But
So
have we-
that
have
you-
we-
You wouldn't be a sending site. After
wouldn't be a
after
sending
this,
site.
you would be disqualified. If
So
you
what's
had
the-
25 acres, it should stay at the 25 acres.
I mean, you
You
could
can't-
subdivide to create a new house and to sell off the property in a normal way, but you couldn't sell your TDRs.
You wouldn't be a sending
Right.
site.
So, okay, I thought I had.
But if they started with only 5
I got
acres,
it.
that's fine.
I think I got it.
Okay.
No.
Let me ask you a question. If I have 25 vacant acres, how many TDRs can I sell if I don't put any houses on it?
Depends on what kind of land is
All
on
right,
it.
but if
It's
it's
perfectly good land, the best there
25.
is.
25, you get 25.
Okay, so I could have 25.
25
Now, if I broke
units.
it into 5 pieces of 5 acres each, and I didn't do a thing to it other than broke it into 5 pieces, how many TDRs could I get?
None, because we're saying you can't.
Before you make this change, how many can I get now?
If you can break it up into 5 acre lots.
And get 25 the same. So it's a direct trade, this for that.
Right, except with each 5 acres, you can put a house.
Okay, so I'm going, okay, so let me continue this on.
Okay.
I thought our objective was to entice people to do it, not to like make it harder for them to do it. I mean, if I have a guy who's got a 10 acre or a 20 or a 40, me personally, I don't care. But if he can see a way to where it's to his advantage to do something with it and still be able to sell something, which is an advantage to the city, don't we want him to win? Aren't we trying to help people
Yeah, the
win?
incentive in that scenario that you just painted is the guy is enticed to do larger estate lots rather than selling off 25 acres and then the yield might be 20 lots, 21 acre lots with the infrastructure.
We
that's
got
in
him to do a
place.
conservationist type thing without even doing anything to it.
Yeah, so have we lost
Why
that
aren't we
incentive?
winning?
So maybe the loophole's a good thing.
Well, that's why we're here.
You see what I'm saying?
I mean, had you guys thought about that? Is that a scenario that, that you guys worked through, that Noel just described?
Well, our thought was that if you're coming with 5 estate lots, you're putting 5 houses, you're sort of, you're going against the whole intent of the TDR, open space. So,
But maybe you change the minimum requirement as a sending unit, and it has to be a minimum of 10 acres. And you still use your 25 acre example. The guy could still divide into 3 parcels, 2 10s and a 5. He could put up to 3 homes on those in that scenario, right? And if the minimum sending is 10, we're still preserving
what do
3
we do
large
with all these
large
other
estate
5 or
lots.
6, 7, 8 acre lots that would like to be part of the TDR program?
You're doing the
I'm
same thing
gonna
now.
go
You're saying
with
that 25 is the minimum. Where I'm saying that I'm picking a number arbitrarily, but I'm just saying 10. So if you've got 25 acres in mind, what does 10 look like? I mean, 10 is a pretty good sized lot, and if we're going to say 10 is the minimum sending requirement, he can't do anything with 5 if he divides it into 3. If he's got 25.
Yeah, but we have a general threshold of 5 right now.
Right, so you could have 5 acres
Right.
and still send it.
Right.
No, I'm suggesting that you raise it. You raise, because aren't you saying now that you basically have to work with 25 or more?
No, I'm saying
No.
if you have a 5 acre, if you had 5 acres, you'd be eligible.
So how does
And
this,
you could put one house, you have allowed one house on your 5 acres,
okay?
and you would be eligible. And you could sell those. But we thought that if you own 25, where we give you one lot and then any acre over 25, you pick up a second house, that you were sort of going against the intent of the TDR by milking it both ways.
I agree,
And
but
that's,
Noel
and
made a
that's,
pretty good
that's all we were
argument.
trying to do was to stop that from happening. But you know what, it's a policy
know,
decision, but that's.
How about you give them a bonus if they don't break it down? Give them an extra TDR if you keep 25 or more.
Well, what we gave them was an extra house.
I love it.
And some TDRs, they don't even give them a house. You can't even, like in some places that do
Yeah.
TDRs, you can't
If you're
even
sending
have a
it, you
house.
can't
We
develop
want
it.
to
They
develop
live in a house.
Virgin.
We allow people to have a house as part
Right.
of their TDR parcel.
I own 25 acres. Okay, I own these 25 acres. I've got $2.5 million mortgage on it. Can I sell you TDRs?
Depends on how much your mortgage is and how much you owe on the bank, and that's a true
So,
point. We have
so if you
some-
put a house on it and it's mortgaged, then you can't sell that possibly, right?
That's probably right, 'cause your bank isn't going to like that.
Okay. So I don't think it can happen if you have a mortgage anyway.
Right.
Well, but
Right?
some of them
Po-
don't have
So it's
mortgages.
down
Some
right.
people don't.
Some of the, some
So
of the
you're
larger
going to
lots.
put $1 million into it and then sell the TDRs and, okay.
I think, Mark, some of the larger properties we're talking about have been here in these families for a long time.
But if they're putting a house on it.
Still your point.
But if they're putting a house
Put a
on it,
house
there's a
on, you get a
mortgage.
mortgage.
But you may be able to still do it. I'm not an attorney,
But that-
obviously, but you might be able to get a non-disturbance agreement with your bank to where it did not interfere with your mortgage, and then possibly you could move forward with something like
But
that.
then I default on my mortgage, I go into foreclosure, I still got my TDR money, right?
Mm-hmm. It's American dream, man.
Okay. I gotta get some land.
But I guess what Noel's point is, maybe that loophole is okay because it makes people not subdivide their development and sell it. It's an incentive for people not to sell their land to make 25 homes.
You still have to have a minimum threshold of
Right.
ascending
Yeah.
unit. And if we're saying that is, right now it's 5. Is 5 enough? That becomes,
I mean, to
I
be honest,
think Noel makes a very good point.
Was that part
have
of
we
this
had any? We done any sending TDRs besides the city?
We're about to close our first deal, and it's 5 acres.
Is that the city one or is that the private one?
It's a private one.
Okay, so
Private.
between two private individuals.
Correct.
Okay,
it's
and
a
that's
5
5
acre
acres.
site.
Okay, I would not like to raise the minimum right now. I mean, I would kind of like to wait to see what the market does on that. I mean,
But is it, Katie, bar the doors, if the threshold is too small? But it's like isn't that what we want?
I don't think-
The question is, isn't that what we want?
And can you, in one of the impact fee studies, they told us approximately how many, and it might have been even about TDRs, but one of the studies, they told us what percentage of our land was in the 5 acre or more zones. Do you happen to know that? Because I know there's definitely a count of how many 25 acre and up parcels there are
Yeah. Well, there's certainly a lot more in the 5 acre.
in the 5. But,
For
I mean,
sure.
is it
5 to
20% of our land or 10% or? We don't know at all. I just want.
I mean, we have data, but we don't have it in
but
front of us.
and really the 5 acres, it's really more than 5 acres when it comes down to it because that has to be 5 acres of,
Plus.
like
Of unconstrained.
unconstrained
Otherwise, it's a
land.
combination of unconstrained land is a lower value.
So it's probably a little more.
But here's the other issue. I just used the deal that we're about to do.
Right.
He's got 5 acres. He's going to get 5 credits, TDR credits. And he's only going to sell 3.11, because you're allowed to fractionalize. So
Okay.
he's going to hold on to 1.89 and hope someday the market will bear him selling the rest of his TDRs. That's on 5 acres. If you made him do 10 acres, he'd be holding on to 6.89 of those, which is, it has a lot of value that he needs a willing buyer before he can sell them. So that's what you're dealing with.
One of the things I find attractive about not changing this is we've talked over the years about what are some of the things we can do to mitigate some of the uncontrolled growth that is pent up at our doorstep. And this is almost, and we know that Georgia being a land rights state, we can't raise our minimum acreage requirements because that would be considered a taking. So you can't, I think, as I've heard our legal counsel talk to us in the past about it, you can't suddenly say our 1 acre minimum becomes a 5 acre minimum.
Right.
Because that's considered a taking. But to a certain extent, this might be a soft minimum threshold to move that demand, or incentivize that landowner to think about
I see
larger
where you're going.
estate
Right,
lots.
sure, and that's
So-
what you're creating is larger estate lots, and if that's fine, and he He doesn't have to sell them all. Maybe he'll
Doesn't have to
just
sell them all
one or
because he's
two.
going to get a TDR credit from the city of Milton.
Right, and maybe he sells 5 at a time.
Yeah.
And,
Right.
to, as needed. I mean, he has the ability to mix and match based on market demand.
I guess it comes down to, do we want 25 1-acre lots or 5 5-acre lots?
I think everybody would tell you they want that.
Yeah, 5 acres, easy.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
I understand y'all's intent, and I was fine with it, but then after thinking about all this, I'm fine with just leaving it the way it is.
All right,
That's
why
just
don't
me.
we- Why don't we
Yeah.
move on?
Okay.
You can hold that thought for your vote.
Okay.
And
All right, Robin.
where
Okay.
is it?
That was on page 6.
Yes,
There we go.
the bulk of it's on page 6.
Well, is that where you are? Which document are you working on?
I don't know what I'm on. Hey.
It's
Oh.
it's 1.7.
I'm on Deerfield.
It's March
Oh, I'm on Deerfield. You're on Crab Apple.
Oh,
okay.
Deerfield.
Are we on Deerfield?
We're on Deerfield.
We're
Oh.
on Deerfield, but
Deerfield.
they're
Well,
both the
you
same
blew us all up
around
when
the-
you
We're on
Good
Deerfield.
news is that we only have 600
when you
panels to get through
switched.
here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we back up?
We'll be all right. Okay.
Is everybody ready?
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, hang on.
Yeah.
I'm not there.
Okay.
Wait for Paul.
Sorry.
Some,
One
just
point-
at the beginning, I mean, it's minimal, but somewhere
Yeah, okay.
we removed the word arcades, and then as you go through this whole epistle, you'll notice that it's used and used again. And
Arcade.
arcade, so it, you know,
We'll
I
look
didn't,
through
I
that.
didn't catch, I'm sure, all of them,
Okay,
but,
thanks for-
okay.
We'll look for that. Okay, all right. Anyway, the next point is block size and connectivity requirements. It's section 2.2.7. So that'll be page 10 in the middle. And what we're trying to do is to discourage dead-end streets and limit their length to 150 feet, clarify maximum block size requirements where stub streets are provided, and so that's what the verbiage is right there. We were discovering that as people were coming in with development plans, they were just stubbing out streets and not making true form-based code type development and kind of skirting the rules, so we're tightening up the rules a bit. So that's the point of that, which is done in both Deerfield and in Crabapple. So the second number, 3.12, refers to.
One of the points I brought up last time was the contemplation of some sort of finish to the stub while it's intended to be a stub until the future development is connected. Did you guys, I didn't see any additional language that addressed that. Is that something that you guys
Yeah,
considered?
I know,
in-
there was a discussion.
What I'm trying to avoid in that, guys, is you get to a point where they lay their asphalt or they pour their concrete, and it comes to a rough end, and at the end of that is nothing but scrub and weeds and whatever, because it's not tended to. Right.
Yes.
And then they think, oh, there's going to be something developed on the other side, but for whatever reason, X number of years passes and nothing's ever tended to, and you've got this, what's intended to be, you know, by definition of this form-based code, a pleasant and predictable outcome, and we don't get that when you've got these unfinished stub streets. I would just ask that you go back again and consider
Lots of language.
some kind of language that suggests that there has to be some, if it's going to be stubbed for, and has the appearance of less than or maybe more than a year, that there is some kind of finish to the end of the stubbed area.
Okay.
And you mean having a curb, or you mean some grass, or you mean take the trees out that are at the end of it in the way?
I'd like to see it curbed. Like a finish with enough of an area to turn around if you've got a fire truck going in or whatever. And it takes one 10-minute session of a backhoe to take up whatever's there when the stub is going to be continued into the next development at some point in time. So I would suggest that it'd be big enough to not impose a problem to if it's a residential area of the form-based code, you're not having to turn around in somebody else's driveway because you haven't provided an ample turnaround area. If you've got a squad car going in or an ambulance going in, that they're not restricted, having to do the same thing if speed is necessary for them to turn around to respond to a call. That there's some kind of a finish to it that allows.
So some type of hammerhead type of turnaround or something?
Yeah, I guess.
Or T,
not
just
sure-
something.
I'm not sure what the terminology is. Yeah, it's something that finishes it to the point where it's not just
Well, we can speak to the
rough.
Public Works and see what we can come up with.
Okay, thank you.
And then the next one deals with thoroughfares, i.e. street types. And current codes provide too much flexibility. There was like different examples after examples. Developers just wanted to build the minimum required. And truly, really, there was only one or two types of streets thus far that have been developed. So the revisions will define approved street types, incorporate on-street parking for guests, 0.3 space per unit, maybe off-street as well. So, so it's just like table 4, that's an example of, as you get into it, table 4 speaks to the thoroughfares, or street types. So we've just reduced the number of them. It'll say on page 40, thoroughfare assemblies, new thoroughfare shall comply with this table. The key gives the thoroughfare type followed by the right-of-way width, followed by the pavement width, and in some instances followed by specialized transportation capability. Variations may only be approved by the Public Works Director of the Public Health, Safety, and Welfare demand. So, anyway, that's...
Before you get,
Okay. Is everyone on page 40?
Yes.
oh yeah, Rob, before you get there, under
Oh,
thoroughfare.
no, there's no page
Oh,
40.
yeah, it's
That's the
39
problem.
and 41.
39 and 41.
Here's 40 here.
We have no 40.
Maybe it's...
You on Deerfield or Crabapple?
Deerfield. Oh, it looks
I have
like
no
it's
40.
skid. Well, I think the pagination is different because he took out some of the tables,
you got
so
it.
there was multiple table 4s. He
I
took
don't.
out some of them.
Okay.
It's actually page 39, isn't it, on ours, I think?
Well, 36, 37.
Mark has 40.
38,
He's special.
You want to hand it down?
39.
Yeah, well, actually, I got 39.
Well, it
looks
does
like
say
4 or
table
5
4.
and
Yeah,
mine's
it's
got
table 4. Okay.
misplaced, but,
Well,
It does say table 4 on the top of page 39,
okay.
in red.
Right,
Yeah. Yeah, new thoroughfare shall comply with this table.
okay.
okay.
But somehow when it got printed or put together, at least on mine,
36.
35, 40 came after 35, but that could have just been the printer.
Oh, there it is, it's in front of 36, 40's in front
Oh,
of
sure
36.
enough.
I don't know, I'm sorry. I
That's
was
sorry.
printing a bunch of copies and.
Robin,
Got it.
under 3.23 thoroughfares, vehicular lanes. Second line, the
Wait. What page are you on?
page 12.
12, okay.
It says, under thoroughfares, bicycle lanes. Then you say the standards for vehicular lanes shall be shown in table. You struck 34A, but you now says in table, subject to approval.
I think it's supposed to, I think it's table 4, but I will double check on that. Because
Okay.
that's what it is, table 4, but we will double check on that.
All right, page 40.
So,
Okay.
And all,
yeah, because I have a question about 3.2.1, page 11,
11.
where it says bicycle facilities where provided along a thoroughfare shall also be considered part of said thoroughfare. Does that mean that there's not a dedication of true sole bicycle space in that thoroughfare? It's considered a part of the thoroughfare?
I think in some instances it would be, and only on larger streets like Highway 9, where they would have an actual dedicated bicycle lane. So I believe that that is correct.
I believe so too.
So it's not demarcated as a bicycle lane, but it's just a
Yeah,
part of it.
this is the same thing I brought up last time, I'll bring it up again, is that's inconsistent with what we've been talking about trying to be as a city with connectivity for bike, pedestrian, and other modes of transportation than vehicle. If we're trying to make this, some of these form-based code areas almost like a live, work, play community, I just implore you to consider the commitment of a bike lane to that. I mean, look at the fanfare that Woodstock's getting right now with all of their new trail and bike path stuff. Look at what the city of Atlanta is doing with the commitment of the green space and the areas they're developing. Here's our opportunity to do it. We won't have a chance to do it again. We're basically asking for 2.5 to 3 feet of committed space in the thoroughfare that is dedicated to a bike lane. And I just think it's short-sighted for us not to take the opportunity now to do that.
Okay, all right.
So please go back and look at that.
So do you contemplate that for residential subdivision streets, not just as like a new,
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's basically, we're trying to make ourselves alternative transportation friendly, whether it's walking, biking,
Okay.
whatever. So we can get those people out of the way of the vehicles.
While you're on that page,
So I can speed.
3.12,
I'm all for that.
under A,
Yeah.
you've got the word cul-de-sacs. Shouldn't that be cul-de-sac?
Yep.
Okay.
English major.
Very good.
That was terrible.
You get the gold star
No,
today.
my English teacher would. I'm sorry to keep.
Okay.
Page 40.
The next
Oh,
point.
wait a minute. We've defined everything, but as I read this under, on page 12, 3, which is now 3.2, where on-street parking is permitted in table 4, so forth and so on. Addition of sidewalk bulb outs. Have we defined what that is? A bulb out?
Well, that's just kind of I know it doesn't sound like very engineering term, but that's what most engineers know, that it's literally a bulb out, so that's pretty common usage.
Okay.
How could
When
you
we
not
say
know
bulb
that?
outs,
I mean,
people
come
know
on.
what that means, so at least the engineers do.
Yes.
I mean, get with the times, all right?
Yeah.
Talk about bulb
I
outs
use that in
today.
Scrabble all the time.
That was good.
And it's really bulb eye after you have more than one.
Okay.
Okay.
And
I'll quit
Robert, if I
taking-
go too far, I would also point out in 3.4.1, you guys do make my point there about the connectivity. So thank you for having it appear there, but it's inconsistent with the other thing I mentioned a minute ago.
Okay.
Gosh,
The objective is to make the network, wherever possible, it needs to be, for sure, in our thoroughfares.
must have got tired.
Okie dokie. The next item is current code requires upgrades with development. Revisions will allow staff to waive this requirement if existing facilities are adequate but slightly different from code requirements such as sidewalks.
What page?
Go back to 13.
It's just public frontages, so let's see.
Page
12,
3.5,
13.
Yeah.
13.
Page 12, and bottom page 12.
Oh, yes, you're correct, page 13, triple I toward the top. A warrant to these retrofit requirements may be granted where the public frontage includes existing sidewalks of sufficient width and condition to provide pedestrian safety. And it goes on about the retrofit, so that's the top of page 13, making those changes, so.
Can you look at what is the new 5, I guess? Where it says, furthermore, the City of Milton Director of provide unified and safe pedestrian facilities. I think you probably missed
Yeah.
something there.
Probably Public Works. Okay. Anything else on that area? Okay, the next is civic spaces or parks and open spaces, expanded civic spaces to include pocket parks, established a minimum width of 60 feet. Essential for the smaller civic spaces, does not apply to parks greater than 8 acres in size. So again, as we have been seeing some developments come in, they were kind of trying to cheat on what's called the civic spaces, and there's different variations of civic spaces, and The city architect had suggested this change to have a minimum of width of 60 feet. So that,
Yeah.
civic zones, which start
Robin,
on page
I thought it was
15.
100.
I'm sorry?
I thought it was 100 feet.
A park.
Shall have a minimum of 100 feet of its
Well, there's
perimeter.
different types that have different
Front of the dwelling.
regulations, so,
Let's say 100.
Yeah, a park's 100, but a civic space is 60, right?
Yeah, okay, got it.
Yeah.
So a civic space is really like a pocket park?
it can be multiple things, so let me find the correct.
Yeah, and where this has come up is we've seen site plans where we do allow frontage of, say, a row of townhomes on civic space, but we haven't, and so they want to come in with civic space, and they just want to have a little landscape strip and a sidewalk and another landscape strip. So that's not to us a civic space frontage. So we thought we needed to come up with a small space, but a minimum size. So when these townhomes came in and fronted on civic space, we at least defined it to be 60 feet wide, so that there was, with a sidewalk, public access through it. Because we were missing that smaller defined civic space. So people were coming in with frontages, they certainly weren't making a large civic space, and they were calling that their civic space, so we needed to define it.
Regardless of topography, what if it's a steep slope? What if they are the townhomes are at the top of a ridge? And what, you know what I'm thinking about when I say that is if you drive down West Side Parkway, over near where the new Verizon Center is, the front of those townhomes
they're way up, you're right.
are up in the sky,
Yes.
and they've got about 6 feet to the sidewalk, and on the other side of the sidewalk is a hedge,
Yeah,
and then
but-
it drops off to the road.
But they're on public streets. If they're fronting the street, they're on, but it's when you're in the middle of a development and you want to front a civic space.
So you're assuming it's going to be flat, right?
Well, you'd only need it, a lot of times what they're trying to do, like what Kathy was saying, was they're trying to create a civic space to create a frontage.
A frontage.
Right, and
When
I'm saying the
there's
same
no
thing, I
road.
get it, but I'm just saying I want to make sure that we're not,
It has to be accessible by the public. There has to be a sidewalk through it. If it's on a ridge line and there's no, then they can't use it. You know what I mean?
right, but in the example I just gave you, there is a sidewalk up there. On top of that ridge, there's a sidewalk, and there's a shrub,
Yeah.
and then, or shrub line, and then it falls off to the street.
Right, but that is frontage on the street. We're talking about where there's no street involved. Yeah, I would
Okay.
say that was.
So,
So you've thought about that part, where it has to be, a ridge line wouldn't come into play in this example.
It's a little green space with, buildings, whether they're townhomes or single family, fronting that civic space. We don't define that civic space in size. It should be at least 60 feet.
So what about, maybe this is an example of what we are thinking about. In the Wheeland development over in Crabapple, some of the single-family homes face in toward a center island. It's surrounded by a road. It's got a loop road around it, so they're all fronting that, and in the middle of that is a green space. Is that what this is defining? Because on the
No.
back side of that is the alleyway to those individual freestanding homes.
well, actually, those are front loaders, but the townhomes are rear loaders. But I understand your point. So what the developers are trying to do is pretend that street was not around that public area.
You're trying to,
And that they were rear-loaded. So that's what's happening with these developments. They're trying to create rear-loaded product, but they're running out of room, so they're creating an open space with no road, because they have their road as a rear-loaded
yeah.
entrance. But then that doesn't satisfy our definition of a frontage, and the form-based code allows for this public civic space to become the frontage, and they were making these civic spaces too small.
Too small, okay.
So,
Then-
yes.
Then I'm in.
Yeah.
Great. Thank
So
you.
if you want to go to page 41, that's the breakdown of the table of the different types of civic spaces.
All out of order.
Page 41,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah, basically what I was describing was C in Crabapple.
Right.
But in the blue areas, you would have homes.
Right, Right, and they're typically rear-loaded, and so that's what we're trying to work with the developers on.
It's a lovely community.
Robin, before I go, the words arcades on page 31, under T5 and also under T6. I happen to find those two.
Okay.
We eliminated the word arcade in
Okay,
the
very good.
description.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, sir. And I'll make a note of what time we leave, Fred, just like we used to.
Yes, I think we should. That's 5 demerits, early departure.
8:45. Put it in the minutes.
Have a good night, Fred.
He said he had enough
Just give me a hard time. Okay.
We're out of here.
Okay, we're all
Follow
okay on the
Fred's
civic
lead.
spaces?
Yeah.
Okay. The next point is common mail facilities, as in MAIL.
No.
Created a requirement, just sounded weird. Common mail facilities to comply with the United States Postal Service, so that's been included. I think we did that before, it's on page 16. Under functions and uses, which is the table, let's skip over to 10 or 11. It's 10, I was right. So if you want to go to page 46. So, and help us remember, I apologize, I want to make sure that Caleb's incorporated some of the discussions we had at the joint work session. My brain's a little fried, so I don't
Oh, yeah.
remember all of them, so I'm asking for your assistance to make sure we've covered it. I think there was some discussion about
The radio
tower.
Yeah.
I looked for that specifically, and what I was, I mean, I don't think it's addressed here under building function. It comes under somewhere else in screening and that kind of stuff, is where I was more concerned about it.
Oh, you weren't concerned about the chart?
No, the chart,
Because didn't you want that warrant to be?
oh, yeah, good catch.
I think you wanted that to be a
permit.
allowed by use permit.
Right.
Which one is this?
I think it was the telecommunications.
Well, there's two spots, and that's one of the catches I,
One is red.
it's under office, it's listed. Upper left-hand corner of the page, under
Okay, the
C.
radio and television, yeah.
So there, it's allowed by use permit, right? UUU.
Yes.
That's fine.
If you go down under telecommunications, under the lower right-hand portion of the page, it's W's all the way across.
So 8, so this is warrants, and then it goes to 8 for section 54. So nobody can get a telecommunications unless they go through what's in the city code of chapter 54, which is cell towers used to be under the guise of the zoning ordinance and was removed out of it, and but you guys still get to see telecommunications even though it's not in the zoning ordinance. So even though it says warrant, they really have to go through a process of a public hearing process.
It's like a conditional use application or something like
Right,
that.
it's like a use, so I can just,
But can't those all become used then?
well, it's not really a use permit.
Yeah, it's not allowed
It's
by
out,
use.
it's not out of the zoning code, it's out of chapter 54, which is a public hearing process, but it's not under the zoning, so I
Right,
guess
but-
we can just
But
check.
warrant implies to me it's Director of Community Development.
That's true, so I think we might need to have some further discussions with the attorney, how to deal with that.
Yeah, we've got to figure that one
Okay.
out.
Because I don't know the answer to that. And we will ask.
Thank you.
Is there anything else on
But we
the-
do need to, we'll come back to that when we get to the screening part, because
Okay.
I don't think it was addressed there.
Well, I think part of the issue is we're gonna have to create a new use permit for radio and television station, because I don't think at this point in time we have a use permit. So I'll have to double check on that.
Okay.
So any other questions on the use table? Okay. Now,
Oh, I'm sorry, I take that back. I didn't, no, it wouldn't be here anyway, never mind. Wouldn't be in form-based code.
okay, some other revisions. We'll deal with the State Route 9 North Vision Study. So this is the section that extended the area north of Bethany Bend to the Forsyth County line.
So if I might just say, so this is the actual amendment to the code. The other discussion items that we talked about were just cleanup revisions and a little additions to the crab apple from Deerfield. But now we have an actual amendment, which is also a piece of this Deerfield code. But it's the amendment of that whole area. It's now being brought in to the Deerfield code with specifics attached to it. Robin will get into it.
Okay.
Right.
Hey, Robin, before we go, I'm not sure where you're going, but before we go too far beyond, on 4.9.2, on page 23, it looks like there was, you dropped something in with regard to required visitor parking.
Right, I think that has to do with when I spoke about the additional .3.
Yes.
Shall provide a minimum .3 visitor parking space per dwelling unit.
And it says that it can be up to 300 feet away. So help me understand that one. So if you've got like a collection of houses in this area, and it's saying that within 300 feet of what do they have to provide the visitor parking? 300 feet of the end of that row of houses, 300 feet from the middle of the row of the houses, 300 feet from any one house in particular?
It says within 300 feet of the intended use, so as measured along the direct improved pedestrian route from the door of the building to the parking space. So I guess it would be, okay, let me see where your parking space is if it's within 300 feet of this store and then 300 feet of this store. So, I mean, I guess it's just, let's say if it's an end of row of houses, that would be 300 feet, but then you'd have to have a row of
Parking to match
a
the
parking
row.
space to match the next one, and then another parking space.
Yeah, and does that really accomplish what you're after?
I think
It
so.
sounds like you're after like an area that would accommodate, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 6 cars, that's separate and apart from the row of housing, right? Because the row of housing is going to be, in this scenario, or this area, shorter driveways, narrower streets for traffic calming. You start putting cars on the street, all of a sudden you've got a traffic problem, or a
Well, I think if the street is designed
navigation
correctly,
problem.
you know, the idea of on-street parking actually slows traffic down, and then it does need to be engineered correctly to accommodate the
Yeah.
on-street
Yeah, like
parking, so.
fire trucks going through.
Is this
and stuff.
primarily for townhome developments?
I mean, right now, we actually have quite a few 10-foot separated, detached type product that I think that they would need it as well. So, it's not just for townhomes.
Right, so I'm envisioning a row of townhomes that, let's say there's, 150 feet of frontage. And you're saying it has to be within 300 feet of that. Where is that 300 feet measured from? The furthest door away or the closest
It
door?
looks like it's for each unit.
Yeah, so does that mean you get, like you said, you draw a
Well,
line?
I think we'd probably
300 from
cluster
one?
them into a parking row. or
Right,
something.
that's what I like, that's what I was anticipating. But I don't know that that's what this says, is my point. It
So do you want to
doesn't
say something along
it
the
doesn't
lines
say,
of no
"And
more
shall
than
be
300
grouped."
feet from the nearest door, or what?
Well, I think it needs to be to say, and shall be clustered or shall be grouped in, in pods of 3 or 4.
All right, but we'll work on the language, that's just a
Yeah, we'll
semantic
have-
issue.
yeah. Groves of parking.
All right.
Okay. So on to the State Route 9 North Vision Study. So basically, it was a very long process with the Highway 9 North, and basically there were 2 parts to it. There was a part with the 5-acre area, which the community.
Robin, where are we
Where are you
on?
now?
Which section are we in?
Yeah, where are we?
Okay, let me get to that.
Is anyone here to speak on this matter?
Yeah, I think there
Are
are
there-
people.
Oh, okay. Let's, sorry. Let's bring them up.
So, let's see.
On the highway north.
So it's
stuff,
this,
right?
this map
So
here
I
at
know
the
that
back
on
of
page
this?
29,
It's
I
in the
think
back of that
it's
first one.
addressed throughout.
Yeah, go back a couple more.
I've got stuff on
Oh, so you
27. That's rather than screen use.
27. Okay. Let's go.
I had
Let's
like
hear them speak.
pages here.
Okay.
Yeah. I've got this. Hey,
So-
Rob.
Yeah, so you're the same as me, 3 pages,
Okay.
I guess.
So there's a new zone.
Okay.
It's T4 permissive for that 5 acre. So if you pull out the regulating plan, which it should be adjacent to it at the end.
Okay.
Which is the map. Which is the map. It's kind of like the zoning map. It's called a regulating plan V2. And you'll see on the upper right-hand corner is the 5 acre road zone. So it's basically 4 parcels of 2 acres each on either side of the 5 acre road, which is the entrance into the 5 acre subdivision. And so Caleb's created this T4 permissive. It has the same form as T4, but allows more commercial uses than T4, but fewer than T4 open does. And these are to reflect the specific use restrictions from the visioning study. It includes specific requirements in the 5 acre road zone, additional commercial use restrictions, maximum commercial density, and specific landscape requirements.
It reflects the things that were negotiated with the community.
Yes, very
Right.
specifically.
Good.
You know, we gave them the visioning plan and told them to meet it exactly. Those were our directions.
Can we go ahead
Was
and
there
call?
somebody gonna speak?
Can we call
Yeah,
them up?
let's
Yeah.
call them up. Yeah.
Okay.
So whoever wants to speak, does anybody want to speak on it or have any comments on the, are you guys happy with what's in print right now for the?
Has there been any more changes since we talked last
No,
time?
no.
We've got some questions that we don't understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Come on
Come on,
up.
tell
Come on
us.
up to the microphone. And state your name and address. Thank you.
I'm Tony Stewart, and I live at 320 5 Acre Road, Milton, Georgia, 30004. And I am associated with the homeowners from 5 Acre Road subdivision, from Lake Laurel subdivision, and Crooked Creek subdivision. And we worked with the owners of the 4 properties for a long period of time with Dr. Elliott to reach agreement on what we both felt we could live with. And we came up with a 9-page plan that specified everything from buffers to the location of where the entrances would be to what would be allowed on the property. And it was a pretty simple 9 pages. It had a lot of pictures in it. It had big print. We all understood it. But then we get this document, which is about 100 pages. And I have tried to go through it, and some other people have tried to go through it, and we cannot find where some of the agreements that we agreed to are embedded in this document. Some specific examples would be in the document that we agreed to with the property, with the people that want it to go commercial, is that entrance egress to the property will be from Route 9 only. Any access from 5 Acre Road will be only residential. That's one of the things that was agreed to. That's an
Why
Uh,
don't
example.
we look for it for you, okay? If you have a whole list, would you like us to go through it point by point? Would that be helpful to you?
Well, I hate to keep everybody. Let me go on just a little bit further, and then another example is that one of the things we agreed to would do, and it was very important to us, was there would be no drive-through restaurants. And I haven't been able to find that. Maybe it's in there and I missed it, but I haven't been able to find it. But in this document on page 3, under section 1.3.6, there is a subparagraph there that I'm no lawyer, so I don't really know what this means, but it says special districts shall be governed by the standards approved by the mayor and city council at the time of their designation as special districts. Et cetera, et cetera. So that kind of implies that this document that we worked up, which became a part of the visioning process, does take precedent and that every agreement here, even if it's not specified in this bigger document, would be applicable. But we are not sure if that's true or not. We're not sure if what we agreed to is applicable or only what is embedded in this document is applicable. And that's our concern, because we, as far as we can tell, we do not have all of the agreements embedded in the bigger document.
Well, all I can say is that we went to a great deal of detail with Caleb to make sure they all were embedded in here. And the plan is what is embedded in here in terms of all those agreements. And it is a very technical plan. Obviously, it's a regulating plan. But we would be more than happy to meet with Mr. Stewart and his representatives and go through it point by point by point.
Okay.
And we did do this with the
Has Ken looked at it?
landowners, the 5-acre landowners who fronted Route 9. They came in and Michelle met with them. So we're happy to sit down and show you where it is, because that was the directive that we gave to Caleb. If something is missing, I would like to know about it, because we had a deal, and the deal was that we were going to carry that vision forward and put it into the regulating plan. That was it.
Right.
Okay. Well, that's our concern, is that, it's a very technical document. It's long, and myself and a couple of others have done our best to go through it, but there's just certain points
We'll go through it with
that
you. I
we
think
have
that's
not
best.
been able to find.
I understand. I think I think we're all in agreement with that. And has Ken looked at it or anything? Has Ken looked at it?
Yeah, the attorneys have looked at it, yeah.
Okay.
But this document is what decisions will be based on. It will not be the agreement, the 9-page agreement
Okay,
that we.
so-
Because the idea was to incorporate
Okay.
that
Yeah.
agreement.
Okay.
Sir, I can deal with I do see the drive-through facility, if you go to page 40.
Well, but he's got a whole bunch of stuff.
I know, I just want to give you those examples,
Mhm.
because it can get cumbersome, and it's.
Yes.
But yes, so if you go to the use table on page 46,
Okay.
so then at the top, you'll see in red the T4P, which is the 5-acre.
Well, I was unable to find where T4P was what we were.
Yeah, so, you know
Yes,
what?
that is what it is.
That is
Okay.
That's what you are.
Okay.
And so if you go down the list, it should reflect all the things that you have
Excluded.
Right.
excluded or you allowed. So if you look under drive-through facility, there's nothing, so that means that's not allowed.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I would, be happy to come in and we can go through them.
Okay.
Come on, we'd love to talk to you.
Okay.
Yeah, you have our contact information, but just make an appointment and we'll be happy.
Okay, I will do that. And the other item that we are somewhat concerned about is we're under the assumption that once this is passed, once the city council has passed it, that these 4 lots will be zoned commercial immediately. Is that correct?
Well, this is a regulating plan, so it is a type of zoning district, and it will be called the T4 permissive. So
Yes.
that map,
Yes.
will be
It
zoned.
will be zoned, yeah.
Okay, so
Yes.
they will be zoned commercial.
Right.
When they're sold and they put something there, will we have a chance to look at the plans?
No, they will come into staff, and staff will, based on what is allowed and what the design principles are that you all agreed upon, in terms of what the look should look like, and the setbacks, and the type of uses, it's already in the plan.
Okay.
Agree to the plan, that sets all the parameters for all the development. And then we will have our architect and the design review board will look at it. There will be a public hearing.
Yeah, so you could look at it
To look at the design.
There will be a public hearing.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's a meeting, but it's not a public hearing. It's a meeting of the design review board, and they will,
Yeah.
they will review commercial buildings.
If it meets the code, we won't see it again.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. We would just have the desire to make sure that every agreement is met, and even possibly to discuss the project to see if there, might be a mutual way, if it would be beneficial to both parties to, like y'all did on some of the church stuff.
The design review board will hear it and be able to get up and speak.
Okay, and when will we find out about that? Just,
Well, I think that's
when there's a bulldozer on the property?
Well, so it will be harder.
See the surveyors.
Yeah, it's gonna be harder because when a building permit is reviewed by the design review board, we do not send out notices of it. So I think it might be on our responsibility to try to reach out to you, and if you hear rumblings about something, please contact us, because there's no legal requirement to notify you when there's a building permit, but that's at the point in time that it would go to the design review board. So
Okay.
I'm not sure what to say about that, other than we will do our.
Okay.
Yeah, and the agendas are online, but I think that we could probably work. Anytime anything that's gonna come along those 4 parcels, it will be very.
Okay, we would certainly appreciate just, if we had any input that we possibly could make. Okay, thank you very much.
Sure, yes. Okay. So the last thing on the list for Deerfield, and I think it speaks to Paul's issues, is the radio and television station standards.
Yeah, I had it in my hand a minute ago. Where is it, Robin, again?
It's 4.15, it looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Page
Yes.
27.
Yeah.
Yes,
Come on up.
Kind of went over pretty quick, I apologize.
Could-
Real brief,
just say your
all I
name
wanted
and
to say.
if you could say your name
I'm
and
sorry,
address.
Brad
Thanks.
Sanderson, I live at 265 5 Acre Road. I'm one of the 4 lots that are in the overlay plan. And my only point is that we worked for several months on this plan. All of us agreed to what it was relative to architecture, relative to what was allowed in there. And so in my opinion, then that is what should be allowed in there.
Yeah.
And we're not asking for any drive-through McDonald's or anything like that, nothing that we did not agree to. So, both sides of the fence agreed to these particular allowances, and I feel like that's what should be allowed to go in there, whatever it is, whoever purchases the land and put in there.
Whatever you all agree to, that is it.
Yes, relative to architecture and everything, and we are very sensitive to what they want in there, very, very much so. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Can I say something then?
Let's do it.
I know it's getting late, but I need to introduce myself. My name is Alex Deuce. I'm the owner of the property on the corner of 5 Acre Road and Highway 9.
What is the address?
There's no address. There's a property on the corner. There's 4 pieces. I own the piece right on the corner of Highway 9 and 5 Acre, and on the south side, 5 Acre. I do want to say to all of you that you guys did a tremendous job in past 2 years. We went through hard times with neighborhood. We tried to satisfy almost like 65, 70 people every time we met. Everybody came up with something. Somebody liked the birds singing. They didn't want to hear nothing else. That kind of example. But I just want to take the opportunity and say thank you very much for all the time you spent and all the agreements we came up with. It's all legal. They had looked at it. It's done deal as far as we are concerned. And I appreciate all your time and good luck to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. So on to radio and television stations. So it was 4.15
Yeah.
on page 27.
Yeah, and having read that, I didn't see any change from when we discussed it with Caleb. And what I was really concerned about is we still designate some particular dimensions here that I think what Caleb had said he was going to do is go back, or somebody was going to go back and take a look at what some of the standard types of equipment sizes were to make sure that what we're writing here does cover those. And I think, as definitive as we are here, we're almost doing ourselves, though, a disservice, because if there is a larger item that needs to be screened, we've only set a minimum standard here of 8 feet high and 5 feet high for the plantings. So I'm concerned that there could still be something that would come in as a potential important piece of equipment to their operation, and we don't have a requirement to have it be hidden for the community. So I don't know how to answer that, other than to say I don't know that we've taken the standard up enough.
Right. And it really keys off the equipment, so we really need to figure out what the equipment is, and we can decide what the minimum standard should be.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're saying that at a minimum, they got to have 8 feet high, so,
Right, but
so
we're
we
saying
can
that
go
might
up
not be
from
high
there.
enough.
Yeah.
Well, it's a minimum.
So
That's a minimum, and everyone strives for the minimum.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you need for 12 feet, then you require 12 feet.
Or if it,
Say up to, say minimum up to the community development, or, I mean, I don't know.
minimum standard of 8 feet or not less than 8 feet, up to whatever is required to mask the
And it
piece
should
of
be,
equipment.
80% should be masked or something, maybe,
Yeah.
we could say something like that.
So, that's,
Are you talking about specific to telecom?
yes.
So you guys can figure out the language, but
Okay.
that's
Yeah,
the
I
that's the
understand where
intent,
you're
that's the
going.
spirit.
That makes sense.
Okay, and the last thing is the large format retailers or big boxes. We already have an ordinance in the zoning that addresses that, so that on the same page in the bottom of 27, Caleb's cited that 64-98 through 64-102, that would apply in the cases within the form-based code. And then whatever would be more restrictive of the requirements would prevail between the two of those. So that's it for the changes in the Deerfield. I will also make a note that I found on the regulating plan that, as you all know, on Bethany Bend across from Cambridge High School, that was part of the visioning plan, and it was zoned during that time. And I did see that it was as a T-zone, and I asked Caleb to change it to the NUP, which is the designated zoning district that will carry on with all the zoning conditions that were assigned to it. So that is how those 9 acres will be developed per the zoning that was approved by council.
But it's still at a standstill, right?
No, actually, they've made some movement. They made agreement with Fulton County Board of Education to do the sewer easement, so it looks like they're starting on their civils to develop that. And that would not be a part of the moratorium because it's not a district, it's not a district that's under the moratorium.
Yeah, I thought Fulton County at one point had said over their dead body, but that's.
Well, apparently,
Somebody
I think it
died.
was,
Apparently,
they were providing a track or something.
Yeah,
I don't know, it's a
they're
quid
building
pro
them a
quo,
track, is
yes.
what they're doing. That's how they got
They're
it.
buying themselves their easement.
Never heard of that before.
Well,
Can't imagine.
They're providing something,
They're
a service.
making a donation.
Yes.
The tennis court's going to be named after him or something.
So are we good on?
No, I have one more.
Wait, one more? Okay.
I just want to make sure that in the charts, Robin and Kathy, that start on page 36, which is the, table 4 through page 37, 38, 39, and 40, with my comments earlier about the bikes in the thoroughfare, does that need to change those charts?
I'll check with Caleb and with public transportation.
Okay, so it really would be pages 36 through 40, just to make sure that each one of those tables contemplates the bike space commitment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hey,
Make sure.
hey, Robin.
Yes.
I don't know if this is right or not. Look on page 31 where we were just talking about, I guess, some of
Yeah.
the things. And you've got some changes there at the top where it goes 4.1, and the 6 is marked out, and then it's 4.18
On page 31,
on 31 at the top.
I don't have any changes.
Which one are you in?
Are you in Deerfield or are you in Crab Apple?
Deerfield form-based.
Elevation. Buildings, heights we measured in number of stories.
So on my page 31,
So what's the section number? I'm sorry.
the section is it was 4.16, but it's changed to 4.187. Right?
Okay, I see it. Now we have the other 31.
Yeah. I'm sorry, ma'am?
We have the other 31 now.
Oh,
I have 231.
Oh, okay. Well, the very first line there in blue says A, and it says buildings in 5 acre road shall comply with sections 416.8 and 416.9. Is that right? 16.8 and 9, or should it be changed to the 18.8 and 18.9 at the bottom of that page? I don't know the answer. I just saw that was kind of coincidental that it's on the same page or not.
Yeah. Let's see, 416. Because that's the large box thing, so I suspect.
I didn't mean to look at it, guys.
Yeah.
No, what does it pertain to?
I'm sorry.
I got one. What page? I don't, I'm not sure.
31.
I was on 31 of the Deerfield Code.
Yeah, so 416, there is no 416.8.
I didn't see one.
Okay, so let me just double check with
Okay,
Caleb.
I don't know the answer. I
Yeah,
just saw it was
I don't know
weird.
the answer exactly either.
It's just
So
numbering.
we'll check with Caleb. But thank you for that.
I'm sorry I saw it.
No, you're not. That's fine. We need
just-
to know that.
I have two more. I'd like to point out that Gabriel's chosen to be quiet tonight on pages like 49 through 50 something on the building configuration, on how to measure elevations. We just wanted to say we appreciate that.
Okay, what's that? I'm sorry, 49.
I'm teasing.
It's teasing.
It's because,
Oh,
yeah,
yes,
the whole
I'm
math of how
sorry.
you measure
Oh, yeah.
elevation.
Oh, the man.
Yeah. But actually, I do have one more. On series one, on 57, on the top of the page where it talks about the maximum 12-story building height, is that a new number, 12? Or has it always been 12?
I think it's just, making it a definition of, I think it's, the T6 was always allowed for up to 12 story. So that's not a new number. I think he was just defining.
Okay, by the word defining. Okay, thank you.
So I'll just double check for you. T6 for height. Page 4. I'm looking at T6, just trying to make sure the height. T6, height, 16 stories, it says here. For T, and then you can go up to 16 stories in T6, so I'm not sure why it was
How many?
12 stories.
There is a 12-story area, maybe it's a T5. Look at the T5.
T5 is
under
only
the-
4 stories, which, there must be some,
I mean, under the definition, he had maximum height, right? Maximum building height.
Yeah.
So technically, should be 16, right?
Yeah, so we'll have to check
we'll
that.
check that.
Yeah, is it 12 or 16? Yeah.
Okay. Good catch.
Well, I was catching it for the other reason. I just wanted to make sure that wasn't new. I didn't realize there was a conflict.
Okay. We will address that.
Thank you.
Okay?
Are we done on this one?
Yeah, you can make a vote on
RZ 1502?
1502, yeah.
Okay.
And don't forget the TDR issue.
Oh, yeah, we need to remove that. Yeah, so that's really the main thing we probably need to remove.
Okay.
Or leave it in there, but I kind of like Noel's idea of that. Yeah, okay.
You would just leave it the way it is.
Just leave the TDR the way it is.
All right, I move that we accept the staff changes to its RZ 15-02, text amendment to Chapter 64, Article 20, Deerfield Form-Based Code, with the noted changes this evening to include, in particular, the removal of the suggested language on TDR minimum requirements, minimum acreage requirements.
I will second that.
And the notes that we have on the table right now are that Mr. Stewart's comments and the notes they specifically wanted at some point are going to be checked.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, along with the additional comments that we've made this evening as well.
Yeah.
All the notes that we've asked staff to review
'Cause I'm good if
would
he's
be
good.
a part of that.
Whatever he wants.
Would be a part of that motion also, obviously.
Okay.
Make his deal good.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay.
All right.
And we're 6-0.
We are
The absence of
two.
Fred.
6-0.
We are 2 out of 13.
Okay, they're just gonna go quicker, okay?
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
Quicker.
Look at that optimism.
Wishful thinking.
Okay.
Fade,
Next-
is that what you said?
The next one's gonna be really quick. It's RZ 15-04.
Okay.
And basically, it's just amending the State Route 9 overlay map to reflect the changes where we're adding in, we're taking away from the State Route 9 overlay, and then you have the new overlay map, which is kind of funky. So we're pretty much left with residential areas, and then the west side of Cogburn, which includes where St. Francis is and the church, St. Aidan's. Also, there's a little island on the northwest side of Bethany Bend and Cogburn. And I've actually amended that a little bit because one of those parcels included the Morning Star Church, so I didn't want to bisect that. So that's what the map will now look like with State Route 9 overlay. So, you guys have any issues with that? Okay.
It's basically the school property in St. Francis, Hopewell School in St. Francis. And what else is right there?
And St. Aidan's is the piece in between
Yeah.
North Park.
Oh, okay. The little extra blip.
Yeah, the island,
Okay, thank you.
purple island, so, yeah. Okay.
All right. Open up for a motion.
Then we approve RZ 1504.
Second?
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay. Now, we're into RZ 15-03, text amendment to Chapter 64, Article 19, Crabapple Form-Based Code. And we've gone through most of the amendments, so let me just take a minute, because there's a few of them that were just to Crabapple, but not very many.
Yes. So is the TDR stuff in here too?
It is.
Okay,
so
okay.
leave it out.
Okay.
Additional crab. So there's only a couple things that were additional is stormwater facilities, incorporated stormwater requirement developed for the Deerfield Code into the Crabapple. Facilities must be improved for aesthetic appeal or placed out of view. And I will have to figure out which page that is, unless somebody can find it first.
19.
You guys are good. Okay, so yeah, page 19. So that was the addition to the Crabapple, along with all the other ones.
You're going to capture some of the same comments we made on
Exactly.
Deerfield, so
Yes.
I don't have to
Yeah,
go over the whole stubbing
there-
thing
that's
again.
consistency, right.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Hang on, I'm still catching up.
And so then the, also just as a note, the regulating plan hasn't changed any, the zoning map for Crabapple, the T-zones, it's remained the same, so that's why it's not in front of you. So
bike,
have any other.
my bike stuff gets captured again.
Everything
Thank you.
we will duplicate
Excellent.
to Pratt.
Thank you.
So that's really the only thing?
Right,
is
that was the
19.
only
That's it?
outstanding.
Okay. No,
All right.
I'm fine.
So this is 05?
It's 03.
03. All right, I move we accept RZ 15-03 with the suggested changes as adopted in Deerfield to reflect those discussions earlier. I'll leave it at that.
How about the TDR?
Oh, and which included that, which includes the removal of the TDR requirement.
Fine, okay. All right, very good.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay.
Okay, now we're gonna skip to RZ 15-01, which is to adopt the corrected City of Milton zoning map. And so you have a copy, you should have a copy of it. So it's just something that we try to do yearly. We haven't actually done it in a couple of years, so it's a needed item to do. So what, we just make sure that everything is reflected.
In a burning hell?
The only changes are what, the Deerfield?
Right, so we've put together, we've actually combined the form-based codes into the map, so we've had a lot of issues with people trying to figure out where everything was, so we come into a comprehensive zoning map.
Okay.
Which will actually, again, be changed, because now we're adding concurrently the upper part of Highway 9, but at least it's already there. I'm trying to find it in my book.
We had separate.
There it is, okay. Trying to see if there's anything else. Did somebody have something about Birmingham? Oh, also, the zoning overlay district, so that's been changed to reflect the correct overlay district. So now we just have rural Milton, Birmingham Crossroads, and State Route 9 as overlay districts, because the form-based codes are actually zoning districts, not an overlay. That's about it.
So we have, say it again, we have rural Milton, Birmingham Crossroads, Highway 9.
State Route 9, what's left over that you just saw
Right.
that map.
And the two form-based code.
But those are not overlay districts. I was just making a point that they were not overlay districts.
Okay.
They're
And
zoning
then-
districts.
Will there be another designation at some point for Arnold Mill when the visioning study is done?
Yes.
It'll be a zoning district.
It'll be a zoning, it'll be
Okay.
just like the form-based.
Form-based
code, yeah.
code zoning district.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
All right. If everyone's okay, we'll open up for a motion.
I move that we approve RZ 1501 to adopt the corrected City of Milton zoning map as indicated on the geographical information system.
I'll second that.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. This is the only one, this is the only one that I kind of have questions on.
Okay. So, the next item is RZ 1505, text amendment to chapter 64, article 17, development standards to create standards and penalties for the request of demolition permits within the city of Milton. So let me get to that point in a second.
Oh, I can start this conversation. The DRB has no teeth in its demolition permits. They come before the DRB, but the DRB can just say, well, gee, we'd really like you not to tear it down, but they have no teeth.
Right.
And this becomes especially important with the historical structures that we do have within the city, especially because we do not have, the HPC has not designated any of them be historic. And had they been designated, the HPC would be caring for the demolition of those structures. And so right now, we have no HPC because we have no designated historic structures with the exception of two. And DRB has no teeth. So what we did is, we gave teeth to we're proposing that we give teeth to the DRB, and we're using the standards that the HPC would have been using, which are good standards. They're very strict standards. They're for historic structures. They're good enough for historic structure. They're good enough for any structure, we feel. And so therefore, what you see is essentially the state standards for historic preservation commissions to when they review demolition permits for historic structures and, historic districts. So that's what we use as the basis to create the teeth for the DRB to use as part of their review process when demolition permits comes before them. But they will now have the ability to say no.
So, I understand the intent.
Yes.
My question is, these standards are extremely subjective on where it says, hey, whether there are any historic, scenic, or architectural significance of the building, structure, site, or object. I mean, I don't know every DRB member, but they could have a different, it could be historic to them. a 100-year-old house could be historic to them just because it's old and it looks pretty, but there's really no history to the house. It's an old house. So I'm just wondering if it's a little too subjective on them saying, I bought this land, I can't tear down this house. They say it's historic, but it's not historic.
You've got one guy or one woman saying that's their perspective. You got 6 more votes that could say,
Can we just define historic?
See that? I don't think you can.
Well, if it's historic, if it's approved by the HPC.
That's why I was.
So you define it as approved as an
I would prefer
historic.
the HPC to do what they're supposed to do and go around and designate these historic homes so we don't have this problem in the first place. But we've been around for 8 years now. We have 2 historic homes, which is not the case. We know that. So I'm worried what we're going to. I just don't want something to happen to where someone who has every good intention on bulldozing this home and them saying no, and now they bought this piece of property with this old home on it.
Well,
Do you understand, I guess? I don't know.
If you took out the first criteria, you just left off the first criteria, does the rest of it work?
No.
I mean, it's all kind of.
Ambiance.
Which ones would work for you? If you were sitting there and...
I tell you what would be, like I
Joe
said,
Schmo brought
in
in
my
an old
perfect
ranch
world,
house that
in
was
my
falling
perfect
down.
world, the Historic Preservation Commission would go designate all the historic homes in Milton, so we don't even need this to a degree. That is my opinion. That's my perfect world.
Well, you could use it as it's defined if they had done that.
Right.
You could even leave
Yes,
these definitions
yeah,
in.
if we have these, yeah, so I mean, I'm just worried that what's going to end up happening is what's already currently happening for the most part is Joe Schmo coming to DRB, but I'm just very concerned on DRB telling John Doe, oh yeah, your grandmother's house that you want to bulldoze and build an estate lot on, we think that's just an historic piece of property.
Oh, but as
I mean,
I said, if you took off A, which talks about historic, you could take that off. Now we're down to, is there any significant importance to the building? Would it be difficult to reproduce it? Is it one of the last,
I think it definitely helps.
We can take out a couple more of these too, but it seems to me there needs to be, if it's gonna go to the DRB, and the DRB is gonna have the ability, because there's no one else to
Now, do they have to
say,
check off each, now, I guess my question is this each one of these have to be checked off, or just?
It says there are considerations to be used, so there are a set of criteria that board members could use. Now, if you think they're too restrictive, but I always think it's important for a board to have some criteria to use.
I totally agree, but I know there are some boards out there, and I don't know how they're going to end up being down the road. I'm just worried it's giving them too much power, if that makes sense.
So are you, if I may, are you opposed to the concept of giving them the authority to say A or nay, or are you opposed to the criteria, or both?
It's more the criteria, because I understand the intent, and it makes perfect sense. I just don't think this is what we're I'm worried about this could get used that we're not intending. I mean, I don't mind them having teeth, because what we're currently doing, someone could bulldoze, the DRB could say no, and they bulldoze the really historic home anyway, there's nothing that can happen. So I understand the intent.
I just think that the historical group should, if there's something coming like this, they need to go out and take a look at it and designate it as a historical property, not the DRB.
Yeah, why don't they do that? I'm just curious. I mean, how long have they been around?
Well, I understand all that, but, the fact of the matter is.
But what's the process?
We do our job.
To do
Homes
it,
on
create
the
a
local
historical.
register, and so those are the only 2 homes that they have authority over. One is the Hopewell House, now the Murray House, 3 homes. So there's only one, the Chatwood Store, that is it. That's the only one they have authority over for demolition at this point in time. And they would have to designate the historic structure, hold a public hearing on it. It would then go to the city council. The city council would hold a public hearing as well, and the city council would vote. That's how it becomes on the local register. So it is.
And is it local register defined by state or other historic criteria standards, or can we establish a Milton-based standard?
Well, it has to be reviewed and approved by the State Historic Preservation Office. And
Right, but what if we canned all that and said, we want to establish a Milton historic register for things that we deem of value to our area?
So can I throw out a suggestion?
Yes.
And that is that Fulton County did the 1996 survey.
Yeah.
We could throw that in and say if
That's-
it's on that survey,
That's where I
that's
was gonna
step
go.
one.
Because we know that
it's
there's an
already
inventory.
identified.
I'm
There's
fine
an
with that.
inventory.
I'm good with that.
At least that's a step one.
Because if, like, for me, it's like, if I have this home, I know it's on this list.
Right.
I know
Yeah.
I can't, but I'm more worried about someone who goes out, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I like that idea. That makes perfect sense.
But then there's the Joe Schmo with the ranch house that's decrepit and dilapidated, he wants to tear down. But we still need some standards for those homes that are, for the non-historic structures, for some criteria. If we're gonna give them the authority, I think there should be.
But why can Joe Schmo not tear down his dilapidated ranch home?
And put it in a dumpster and haul it away today. Why is that?
So what you're saying is you only wanna give them authority for those 105 homes, or whatever's left of those 105.
Yeah.
I mean,
structures.
as the way it stands right now, yes. Because right now, they can go to DRB and nothing, how many times has DRB said no on a demolition?
Well, they've
permit?
never said no.
Okay.
Right, but because they've never, because they can't say no.
So, I mean, I'm
They have
a,
no authority.
yeah.
They've deferred and they've put on conditions, but they've never
tried
denied.
to encourage people not to tear down, but they, at the bottom, at the end of the day, they cannot say no.
See, I'm just a kind of a supporter of the land right, and if it's a dilapidated ranch house, I don't understand the purpose of it.
Well,
I'm using that
but what
example,
this says, though, is if you're the guy who owns that dilapidated ranch house, you can go before the DRB, it's on the list, and they can still say, yeah, you can do it, you can knock it down.
What if they say no?
Then you
Can
can't.
you sue the
See,
city?
that's my problem.
And what if it's
See,
not
I'm-
on the list? I'm not on the list at this point,
Right, that's 18 years ago.
Yeah. I get it about the list, and we can tie it to the list for these criteria for historic buildings.
Because I think that's the intent, correct?
Yeah. But what do we do about other demolitions that come along?
I
They're
almost,
not historic. Maybe they're significant. Maybe George Washington slept there.
The
or
way-
some famous.
I say
Is there any reason?
maybe leave it the way it currently is, at least for the public to even know there's a demolition going on, and at least someone can speak about it, but I still think, I mean, they're not gonna tell me I can't tear down a ranch home.
I think you should
That's
maybe
my opinion.
suggest that one of the rules is if anyone applies for a demolition permit, then there's a 90-day period to give people a chance to look into it to see if something like that happens. And if you don't come up with something, you gotta cut it down. Sorry.
I mean, I understand your intent is to give them teeth and not, yeah. I mean,
But if we can't stop them,
But do they post a sign and say there's going to be a meeting?
Well,
For,
It's on the
this
agenda.
house is under
It's on the
consideration to be
agenda.
demolished, and the meeting is,
but it's
No.
not on,
it's
you don't
just
get,
on the agenda.
Yeah, you
That's
don't-
it.
you
It's
don't get
not
a sign.
posted
There's no
on the
sign?
site.
Okay, for
No,
that.
it's just on the agenda, that's right. And so if someone comes in for a building, for a
Not this.
demolition permit, they
Can't
can't
support
get that permit until they go to the DRB. and it's a public hearing, and the DRB is just doing, it's really a courtesy review, because as I say, they have no teeth.
So DRB right now, they get a permit, but so in theory, right now, if DRB said no, they don't get a permit.
They
We've
get a
never
permit.
said no, yeah.
They have no authority to stop that.
Okay.
It's an application form.
Okay.
Not a
And it's-
permit.
The zoning ordinance says a part of the design review board's scope is to review all demolition permits.
Right,
It says
okay.
review, it doesn't say
Vote on it,
approve
approve,
or whatever, because there's no teeth. And so we already get a lot of complaints. There's a lot of developers who have some old, ramshackled structures on property that they need to get rid of. And then, what do you mean I have to go to the DRB? That's gonna hold me up another 30 days or whatever the time lapse
Yeah.
is. And I'm just saying, that's
Right,
a
yeah.
typical situation.
Yeah, but we've had a lot of barns, for instance, that all barns are going.
Yeah.
And, maybe, they could say move it or something to save it. I mean, there are things that can happen here, but there's no one that really, as I say, has the authority to make someone do something. That's for the community's benefit. I mean, I think that was.
Well, could we, if the DRB denies it, could the applicant petition the historical?
Well, that appeal goes to the city council. So they go right
there's
to
still
the-
there's still a voluntary organization just like us. There's
Yeah.
no.
I feel more comfortable with that.
But so where do you start? Do you start with the list?
I think the list is the start because that is that is the actual intent, correct?
Well, I think when the list was created, it was an inventory. It doesn't mean even just because it's on the inventory, does it mean it's significant? It just means that it's, at that point in time, it was more than 50 years old, I believe.
No, it had some merit.
Just more than
It had
50.
some- Yeah, it had some merit.
Okay,
But
I
a
hope
lot
it
of them
does.
have already gone.
Yeah, I'm on the
Yeah, a
list.
lot of them are.
That's what I was like.
A lot of them have been torn down in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Right, and so that's
Yeah, we've had some
kinda-
tragic stuff happen.
And so, and that's what I'm very comfortable with, is giving them teeth on those subjects that we don't want.
Okay,
You
all
know,
right,
I mean,
and with the criteria we gave you are probably good criteria for those historic structures.
that are on the list, correct.
So
I mean,
now we're back to
I suspect-
non-historic structure. Where do you want to go?
I've kind of rambled enough. I'll see what everyone else wants to have to say.
Well, non-historic structure, you've got some other ways to measure that on here. So I'm okay with the purview that you are giving the DRB with the rest of the criteria you've established. It's non-historic. It still has to, it still can be reviewed for some other conditions
Yeah,
on here.
there's enough on here.
Yeah.
Seems like that part's working. It's just protecting the historic. It seems like it's working other than potential historic homes, right? Or historic properties.
I'm just getting late. I'm just confused.
No, we're in a good place on this. I think that we at least start with an inventory that was identified before.
That's a specific.
Yeah, you've got something that you can, it's a list. Some of that list may already be gone.
Probably
knows.
That we know, but so we'll clean the list up.
Yeah.
Tell Historic Preservation Commission to do it.
But something that's not on the list that still has to go before the DRB because it's going to be demolished in order to get their building permit, still can be reviewed for these other criteria.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, I'm fine with it being reviewed.
Because that barn may not be on the list, or that rock that is the Cherokee rock. There may be a new discovered rock. I don't know, but.
Or it's a burial ground.
Yeah.
We had a rock formation we thought was an Indian burial ground. We had to send out an archaeologist.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about.
Yeah, right. So what you're saying is then the DRB has that authority and they use this list, but they'll use a more stringent criteria for the historic structures, which we'll attach. And then the others.
I'm gonna vote no.
No,
We
I'm
can
just-
go ahead and
I'm-
just make a
right, no,
motion.
I'm just trying to-
Yeah.
Well,
What I'm
That's what an
hearing,
accident.
right, I
I
think
can't
there's
support-
diversion here.
Oops, sorry.
Yeah.
If that's what you're saying.
Terry.
That's what I'm saying.
So everything gets
That's when an
reviewed,
accident
historic or
catches on
not,
fire.
and
That's right, I'm on it, yeah.
the historic criteria are used that
Tomorrow.
list, non-historic criteria use the rest of these criteria. That's, all right, so
Yeah.
you just want the historic criteria, period.
That I put up without a permit.
So
But I've got one more area I want to address before we get anywhere near a vote. And that is on page 2, item 4, under C, where it talks about the owner shall maintain the site in a clean and orderly state and shall properly maintain all existing trees and landscape on the site. If they've leveled something on that site, and then we've determined that it was an inappropriate demolition, so they're now being held accountable to that 5-year window where they can't do anything with it. It's saying that they have to properly maintain what's left. But I'm also going to suggest that if the city, if the DRB determines that they've created an eyesore besides just what is left, there could be a couple of trees that are left and a couple of bushes that are left. But if it's become an eyesore because they haven't they haven't regraded it, they haven't reseeded it, that we might actually have the purview to suggest that it needs to be landscaped to some extent. So it's not an eyesore. It's not just a vacant lot. So my suggestion was add some language that describes minimal landscape requirements if the city or the DRB determines that they've left an eyesore as a result of the demo. Or something
So you mean like
unsightly.
a number 5 or just included in number 4?
Included in number 4.
Okay.
So basically, if there isn't anything there, because it says maintain all existing, but you're
Right.
saying it needed
To re-landscape
to re-landscape.
to minimal standards as determined by the city arborist or something to that effect.
And then what, the city's going to sue them and get the money?
Well, there is no, that's, you make a good point. There is no financial implication to their decision other than the 5-year restriction of no development. So there's no punitive other than waiting 5 years. Nothing punitive. So.
And if so, I'm saying, so if they don't do that, then you add another 5 years to their time period? I mean, what's the penalty?
Well,
Well, you can always bring them to code enforcement.
That's what I'm saying. At some point, it's like, what do you?
Well, that person that person that lived on Hopewell or whatever. I mean,
yeah, he put a lien on his house.
City put a lien on the house.
Which we did.
Yeah.
Still ugly.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's harder to determine to be honest, if you think about if you removed a building off of a piece of land, which the majority of our buildings are agricultural, correct? I mean, there's lots of land, there's lots of lots out there that aren't very pretty lots that we don't do anything with because that's pasture or it's just scrub. I just think it's going to be hard to make that determination once you remove a building. I mean, I can see it if it's like in the middle of Deerfield or if it's in the middle of Highway 9 or Crabapple, there's a standard. But when you start getting into 85% of the land of Milton that's AG1, how does one discern what is appropriate?
Well, but I think you said it too, that as a result of the demolition, property shall be re-landscaped to the standards of the city arborist, and he's gonna be the arborist.
That's it. Yeah.
So whether it's scrub brush or it's pristine pasture, he'll
Use
make
his
it
reasonable
consistent.
judgment to make the call.
Yeah,
That's what I think.
I can subscribe to
I'm fine with that.
Or throw the red flag.
Of course not.
Okay. That's all I have.
Any other?
So help me clarify on the criteria. So how should we word it that
Well, technically,
A could have to be on the 1996 inventory list?
actually, if what Paul wants, you don't even need the list, correct? I mean, you don't even need it.
Sure you do.
You do?
Yeah.
I mean, because even if you have the list, even if the list isn't on there, it's going to qualify. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, the home is going to qualify.
I think the list.
But you can go throw it on there anyway.
I think the list.
There's nothing wrong with putting the list
And so that's why
on
I'm asking you,
on
where
there.
do you want me to put the list?
The
As
list,
part
put
of
an
the
A.
criteria?
It goes in A.
Yeah, put A.
After A, put C list.
Okay.
C,
1996 and.
Yeah, for
it's
definition
a
of,
list.
Whatever it's titled.
I'm in favor with everything.
You're still going to say no?
Yes. But,
Yeah,
okay.
okay.
We'll just move on so we can get Okay.
Right, so,
All right.
Oh, we get back. I can mess this up.
So we'll, let's have a motion on the table.
A motion to approve or disapprove this whole list?
It's your motion.
Well, my motion would be to just disapprove this whole entire, I don't know what number it is, RZ 1506, is that what it's called?
It's 05.
05.
Oh, so RZ 1505 would be my motion.
You don't want any of it.
I just don't think
I
there's.
would second
I understand
it,
the
but
intent.
I'm waiting on the list is my only.
Yeah, understanding the intent, I can't.
If there's no second, then the
Can't
motion
approve.
doesn't
All
carry.
right.
It just
Do
dies.
we have a second on Noel's motion? All right. So we're open up for another motion.
I move we approve RZ 15-05 to include the inventory list created by Fulton County
no, the State Historic Preservation Office
State Historic Preservation Office
in 1996.
in 1996 to be incorporated into point A and to amend C4 to include the measure of the city arborist on re-landscaping to a minimum standard to resolve any unsightly issues that may remain as a result of the destruction.
A motion, Paul. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say
Hold on,
aye.
I have a discussion point.
Okay.
So, are all of these other things
Yes.
still in play?
He's keeping everything in.
Okay.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay.
Wait, okay.
Chris, well, you're
I never saw
you're
your
the swing
hand,
vote.
Chris, go up.
Sorry, aye.
Aye for
So
it?
4-3.
Okay.
Okay, so 4 to 3.
Oh, I'm sorry, no, it's
No, 3-3. No, Fred.
Oh, where did Frank go?
Well, that's what I thought when okay.
Oh,
So
Fred.
you're for denial?
No, hold on.
No,
That
approval.
Oh, it's
approval.
4-2. It's 4-2.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 4-2. It's just me and
4-2.
Noel again.
Okay, that's okay. That's what I
So I
thought.
say, we got to call Fred up.
Yeah.
Fred told me he was for it before he left.
All right.
Okay. Okay. Very good. Okay. This is exciting.
Yeah, we're getting it done.
Yes, RZ 1506 is a text amendment to section 64-1609 swimming pool private to amend standards for neighborhood swimming pools. So basically, in the last couple or 3 years, we've had a lot of variances go to the Board of Zoning Appeals this is for neighborhood swimming pools. And so we're reducing the requirements, well, two things. Under 2C on the first page of the amendment, we're saying location of pools, pool equipment, and decks shall be located within the interior of the subdivision and shall not be visible from any exterior street. So this is something that we want to try to, in new developments, we want to try to keep the amenity areas on the interior, because we've had some situations where the amenity areas on the exterior, and it kind of ruins our rural view shed and the whole bowl of everything.
Well, when you're saying swimming pool private, you're talking about the entity within, it's a amenity to a neighborhood development.
Yes, an amenity, not, yeah.
Okay, this is
Not
not
for a single person.
Exactly.
No.
I just want to make
It's
sure we're
for
clear on
the-
that.
Okay.
The large amenity area or whatever size it is. Needs to be interior.
Yep.
Okay. And we say shall not be visible. So we didn't give an exact dimension, but I think that we can work with the developer and try to get them to the interior of it. Then for the location on what's the new D is, it was 100 feet from all adjoining interior property lines and 100 feet from all property lines which abut single-family uses, and we've reduced that down to 35 feet.
And why is that important?
Well,
Because 35, you actually could be encroaching with a noise factor for a
Right on
residential,
top- you're right on top of
immediately adjacent
Well, so what-
residential property.
what's happening is that the board, that we've had in the last few years, a fair amount of requests to reduce the 100-foot down to actually even less than 35 feet. That was just something that I've asked my fellow planner to figure out what was typical for the request. And so typically when you have a lot of requests, it's like, okay, there's something with the ordinance that might need to be changed.
Yeah, no, I get that part. But, I mean, that's, you're taking off.
So, but the
65 feet.
applications are coming in with even less than 35,
And they're being approved.
and they're getting them.
Why?
BZA.
Wow.
Because they feel like it's
So we thought we'd at
acceptable.
least want to make a stand at 35.
You know, I mean, why have a code if you're just gonna?
Well, that's what they're trying to change it now.
Yeah, I just want, I understand why
Well,
35 is
make
the
it
right
zero.
That's what, exactly.
Just put it in my backyard.
Yeah, why
Yeah,
not
I mean,
put a
35
zero,
feet,
and then we
it
don't
needs
have to
to
worry
be
about it.
Just don't buy the lot next to the
It's less
community
than
pool
from here to
house.
the window.
So also.
And it's a sizable pool. If it's a community amenity, it's a sizable pool with some sizable, significant equipment.
So we're talking about a big neighborhood pool, and they put their water filtration right next, 35 feet from someone's backyard. I mean, and they're approving that, just like.
Yeah,
So,
35
for
feet,
instance-
guys, is basically from the back
Huh,
wall
that's
right here to the,
I'm surprised that's being
the
approved.
first air moving thing in
That would
this.
never be.
in this
A
zone.
lot of them come in.
I'm surprised anybody would buy the house next to it, is what I'm
Well,
surprised.
so for instance, that was done,
At
when
least
I
not by me.
remember, it was done at
Once
the
we make a
Highlands
rule,
at
it's a rule.
Echelon. They did it was interior amenity area, but they got their reduction probably to about 25 feet. Then there was also not North Valley, but Blue Valley, they got that. Also in the form-based code area, well, it wasn't form-based code, but in Crabapple Station, they're squishing a amenity area between those small lots, and
So
they
who's
got the
approving this?
reduction.
Who sees this?
BZA.
The BZA.
Oh, yeah, well, there's the answer. Oh.
I mean,
I mean,
pretty-
you guys
I mean-
can do whatever your
Hey,
recommendation, this is just what we're
here's my
bringing
thought on
forward
this.
to you.
If you buy a house that close to the pool, you deserve the pool.
I mean, the pool's not
You know
being
what?
put in after you bought the house, it's being
Well,
put in
in
before, so
some
you're
cases,
making a
Exactly
decision.
right.
So you're making a
and
decision.
now it's
Crabapple it
afterwards.
is.
Yeah.
You know?
Sometimes they are being put in after the fact.
But they know where it's going.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, if they know the pool's gonna go there and they buy the house, so that's on them.
And to be honest, with
That's a good point.
Crabapple,
You
that
know.
was always called an amenity
That
area,
technically
and
was.
even
Everyone
there
knew.
was it was planned to have a pool. So
Everyone
if
knew.
anybody did their due diligence, they would have
Yeah.
known that
That's a good
eventually it
point.
could
You know,
be.
they know, they're making the decision.
Okay, so basically.
But they
what
might
it-
have
what it
said, well,
comes
it's
down
gonna
to
be a
is
pool,
the
but I'm gonna have a
developer
100-foot buffer.
It's
They
gonna
have
have
to sell that house for less money.
yeah.
And now we're saying they don't have to have that.
Well,
That's the proposal.
it's up to
Yes.
you. I mean, we're just trying to keep them out of the
It's up to the
BZA.
city
But obviously, we felt that there was a need here, so.
Or we just leave it the way it is.
Or we just
and
leave it-
they
BZA
just-
says no.
and if they-
That's perfectly fine, too.
Yeah, we just leave it the way it is. And they want to go to BZA, let them go to BZA.
So I just say I disagree with the pool. I mean, I know it shouldn't be by the road, but in our neighborhood, the pool is all the way in the back. And we have more crime and more vandalism there because it's so private,
Yeah.
and quiet. Versus somebody driving by all the time, seeing what's going on.
Crazy where the pool is.
You know, or, yeah.
Then we have people.
So, but I mean, if you want to do it, I'm just saying it's going to create more crime, more vandalism, more problems when you have a pool that's hidden and can't be seen.
Yeah, I agree with
So-
that. I mean, even when you have it up front, we have the same
Yeah.
problem. It's
So-
hard not to, but if you put it in the back, good luck.
Where's your house?
Let's just make a motion to
the
deny
point.
pools, period.
No public amenities.
Yeah.
I remember when they put that in a long time ago. Wow.
Give us open space. That's what we're trying to do.
I'm good.
You're good. You're good with that.
Fine, and I
Let's-
make a
I'll let someone
motion,
make a motion.
I make a motion, we approve RZ 1506.
The way it's written,
Yeah,
proposed.
yes.
I'll second it.
All right. I'm still thinking about it.
Yeah,
Sorry.
me too.
We got a motion
Hey, Chairman, get control of the.
and a second. Is there any discussion on this? Because if it's approved,
What have we been doing?
It's what they, I mean, the BZA. I agree. Okay, is there any discussion on the motion by Chris?
Hang on, I'll read one more. I'll read
I'm
it
just,
for you.
the only thing I have is, I don't like the idea of forcing them to put it in the interior or in the back.
But you're preserving the rural view shed if it's put up front.
You can do that by landscaping around it if you put it
Well, the
up
problem,
front.
but then when you get really landscaped, then it's not really the rural view shed.
Okay, well,
Or you can keep it in front, but just keep it out of the rural view shed, which means it's gonna be 60 feet back.
I'm gonna vote no anyway, so it don't matter.
I won't even try.
Oh, good. We got the proposal, let's have a vote.
Any more
So, yeah,
discussion?
So it's
No.
as recommended, that's what's on the floor.
Okay, I figured out how I want to vote. Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
Aye.
No.
Okay, so it fails.
Okay. Now I'll do a new motion.
So
Open
it
up
fails,
for new-
so you guys take it back and
Well,
it goes to
but-
the mayor and council like this, and they debate it?
No, we're gonna open up, we're gonna open
you
up for a
need
new
a new
motion. Let's open up for a new motion.
Set up for a new motion.
Oh, something's gonna pass before we get out of here. Just
I make a
open-
motion,
mean,
we don't change it at all, we just leave it like it is.
Or,
That's-
or
that's
I
what-
was gonna say like
that's what Chris
50,
just
I was gonna say
did.
like 50
No,
feet.
No, he said as recommended.
As
by
recommended by
staff.
staff.
Oh.
You know,
Which
or
is
we
with
can,
the red.
or we can take it to 50 feet, you know, but you said most people's 35 feet, is that kind of the?
I mean, I proposed 50, and Angela said, hey, they're getting it way less than 50.
Let's
But
just do 50.
Yeah, but maybe it's time for a talk with our folks who are rubber stamping this stuff. Hold them accountable to what.
All right, make a motion.
Is that part of our motion?
Make a motion.
Yeah, because we have people picketing out front
just
because of
gonna
this.
say it, yeah.
I mean,
Pool's
it's such a
50
major,
feet.
yeah, it's such a major issue.
I move we approve RZ 15-06 as originally written with no amended changes.
I second that.
We have a motion by Paul, a second by Gariel.
And we hold the DRB responsible for administering the policy.
That's BZA.
BZA, I'm sorry.
Make
Hold the
sure-
BZA.
make sure you get Paul on
accountable.
record.
And they don't have to move the pools inside. They can leave them.
So we have, any discussion on
Okay.
that motion?
No, I like it.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
So it's,
4-2.
who was the second person?
Chris and
Chris
I
and.
think Noel's just
Noel are
hanging
opposed.
I voted against it first, but now I'm with it.
Yeah,
I
Five,
changed the.
5 to 1.
Motion.
it doesn't matter.
Oh,
5 to 1, so I only saw Chris as.
One nay. One
Yeah.
nay over here, naysayer.
Okay.
I just want to see my name in the picture.
Okay.
They're gonna do a story on the pools.
Tell us about your pool theory.
By the way, are we putting in the minutes each time these guys denigrate one of the other boards here? Because I've got a lot of,
Well, technically, on
Just
the
one.
historic, there's only like
the
2 people
Historical
on there. I
Society, you've
think.
been thrown under the bus.
Yeah.
And the BZA.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
I'm not putting it in the minutes, but people can,
Are
Watch
they
it on
watching us on
TV.
TV?
They're on TV right now.
I don't care.
You see these
At
people?
10 o'clock at night on a
We're looking
Wednesday.
for a standard. I mean, the community is expecting a standard of administration of this, and if they're rubber stamping everything, they should be called out for it.
I agree with variances, but there is a point to where.
you're preaching
No,
to
it's
the
supposed to be a
choir,
hardship.
so.
Okay.
Are you
That's the
preaching to the choir?
criteria.
All right, let's move on.
Let's talk
Next
about
one.
these equine
I
government
want to
people.
get this over
Yeah.
with.
Oh, man, where are they?
We got about 10 of those, right?
Yeah.
10 of those businesses?
These, oh, yeah, it's a big business.
I mean, right now, we don't have any use permits that I know of. And
What?
there's operations going on out there, I believe, but the one that.
Their
Let
grandfather?
me just start.
You're
yeah.
talking about like medical doctors?
No. We're talking about equine garment fabrication.
Slave labor,
So
is that what we're
these
talking
ne-
about?
So these next three are kind of related, but it's RZ 1507, text amendment to Chapter 64, Article 6, Division 2, and AG 1 District to amend the permitted uses to include equine garment fabrication and associated development standards. And then RZ 1508 is to delete the equine garment fabrication use permit, and RZ 1509 is to amend the definitions to create a definition for equine, because there was not one. So, if you've read the staff memo, the goal was to try to make away the equine fabrication, which is basically tack shops that make saddles and associated equestrian equipment, to be allowed by right in the AG1 district. So
Yeah, but-
if you go to that, sorry. Can't find my name.
Are you really intending to say tax shops? Because that's commercial to me.
This is commercial.
No, this is to be used in AG1.
Yeah, it's always been an AG1, correct? I mean,
Well,
Well, it's a commercial business is what it'll end up being.
Well, there are different I mean, like a landscape business is a commercial use. There's certain things that are permitted. A
Right.
kennel is a kind of commercial use that's done by right.
How many equine fabrication applications have we had?
Well,
One, right?
But they're flying under the radar.
So we're writing an ordinance for one individual, I think. I don't know who the individual is, but I think that's what we're doing.
Oh, we've had it. I mean, but haven't we had this in here before?
No, we've been debating whether or not it has any merit.
Yeah. I thought we left it in there. It was just like, let them get a use permit and we'll see if it works. This is by right now, right?
Yeah, that's
well,
where
this is a
going.
proposal as by right. So, number 10.
Why is it not just a use permit?
Because they don't want to have to go through a use. They don't want to have the light of day on it. I think it needs the light of
I'm
day.
okay with it as long as it's a use permit.
Well, in this proposal, it would be eliminating the use permit and putting it into a uses by right, like a kennel, a veterinary clinic.
Yeah.
Those are uses by right.
Do we know the process? Do they bring in, they make leather saddles?
Well, it said it
Now,
has
do
to
they
be-
bring in leather that has to be tanned? Do they
That's
bring in
the-
a
those are
finished
exactly my
product? I mean,
questions,
we don't
too.
know.
Is it tanned? Are there chemicals?
Yeah, I mean,
are there
what do they-
lots of
you know, what's
deliveries?
the process of it?
Is there a smell associated with it? Is there a noise
Because tanning is very
associated with it?
pungent and bad. If
like
they're
somebody
tanning
to-
it there first.
I'm fine with it as long as it's a use permit. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
understand why. Why? I'm just curious why.
I just think when we're writing an ordinance for the sake of one, that's not.
Is it okay for
what
this
we're-
one person just to do a use permit and have a couple public
Obviously, they
hearings
don't
and
want
call it a day?
I mean, if that's your druthers.
I don't know. I mean,
And the mayor and council can decide otherwise.
Is it a
but-
use permit right now?
There is a use permit,
Yeah.
yes.
So if they wanted to come in and fill out a form and get one, then they could get one.
Well,
They could
it'd
apply
have to
for
be-
one.
It'd have to be heard.
Yeah.
Well, how long they been there? I mean, are they probably grandfathered? Is there such thing as a grandfather?
There's a history behind it.
Well, but does, I mean,
So what happened was that it went before, it was found out in Fulton County when we were unincorporated, I don't know, 15, 16 years ago. They basically, it's kind of complicated. At the time, there was no use permit for the use, but the Board of Commissioners allowed this person to operate for 2 years and until a use permit was created, but they never came back to actually get the
Apply
use
for it.
permit.
So they were supposed to.
So it was grandfathered, non-conforming. So nobody ever followed up with it, but
Right.
they've had business licenses for the last 15, 18 years or whatever
Right.
the timeline is. And so when it burned down, then they were stuck because
Because of the
they
chemicals?
had the grandfathered, non-conforming.
Where is it?
So I guess I'm going back to my point is if we allow it by right, which I know is very limited and the chances is a 2,000 square foot building is the maximum. So the chances, but if we allow it by right, I just don't understand why they can't come apply for a use permit and they would, I'm not saying judging, but I'm assuming it would be okay. So why can't they
You're
just-
right. So I make a motion to deny RZ 1507.
08 and 09.
08 and 09.
Yeah, well, if we want to do them all together,
Yeah,
08
yeah,
and
put them all
09.
together.
Okay.
I second it.
Wait, okay. Can we just do it individually? if
Yes.
that's what
All
you
right.
wanna
Let's
do?
just do it
Screw 'em all
individually.
up. Come on.
I mean,
added
if
individually.
y'all think we're crazy, okay, because I just don't. Someone can help them out and apply it.
Okay,
Yeah,
RZ
come on. It just, have it come under the light of
1507
day as it should be.
Makes sense.
We don't know when, first off, we don't know when.
Make the motion.
We shouldn't be writing stuff
All right, I
before
make a
one
motion that
individual.
we
had me at
deny
hello.
RZ 1507.
Second it.
I got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
Make a motion that we deny RZ 1508.
Second it.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
Make a motion that we deny RZ 1509.
Now, I will say,
Okay.
Or we can,
I think you could approve that for a
the
definition.
definition.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Okay. Yep.
So
No,
it has to be
I-
all of those, right?
But the definition.
They have to fabricate it, they have to wholesale it, and they have to retail
Well,
it.
they don't have to do all of it, they could do one or the other.
Well, it's all and.
Oh, or, okay.
I'm fine with the definition because I'm.
If you're fine with the
But
definition.
what does fabricate mean?
Yeah, it
Does
doesn't.
that, does
it
that
doesn't-
include tanning?
Does that include tanning?
Hold on.
The
would have
definition
to.
is not a complete definition as I'm reading
Or
it.
you
Where
could
is-
create a I mean,
whatever.
Where is it?
Whatever you want.
Last page there.
Oh, okay, well, that's fine.
Is there a definition now if it was a use?
No, there is no definition. That's why I included a definition. Now, if you don't like the definition, that can be.
So, Quinn Garment is a fabrication.
Did Fulton
wholesale
County
distribution, and retail sale of items.
create a definition for the one that they were approving 15 years ago?
No.
Yeah, I mean, Quinn Garment.
I mean, there's no, they created eventually they created a use permit, but they never created a
But then,
definition for that
but
item.
For
we're
what that
still gonna-
was.
They can still
So
apply
we-
for
yeah,
a use
so we
permit,
would have to
yes.
define it.
Does a retail
I'm
sale
fine.
mean it's also a
I'm fine either
store?
way. I mean, I really am fine.
So the thing is that
Do we have to have a definition?
it would be nice to have if you wanted a use permit, I mean.
Well, let me ask you this. Let's say that we define it. And then they come in here to get one and it doesn't meet the definition.
Well, and so that's part of the issue is that under the use permit, it doesn't allow for retail, but the definition allows for.
Yeah,
Because what does retail, I mean, a
Because to be
store?
honest, retail in the sense of people go to this man to buy a saddle.
I'm okay with that.
directly.
I'm okay with that.
It's not a
Yeah.
distributor. It's not a whole.
That's why I'm fine with-
Wholesaler.
That's why I'm all about the
reality
use
is-
permit.
Well, does he have a showroom?
I'm fine with
No,
it.
I mean,
I
it's
don't
just a
wanna
place
necessarily
he
give him retail by
fabricates
right.
things
He's
and
got a
people
picture.
come
That's what I'm
and
saying.
buy saddles.
Mostly by internet, on horse shows,
No, I
things
mean,
like
he's
that?
Because he needs to explain to us then what the retail component is.
I mean, the retail in his situation is not a storefront.
Yeah, I
It is
totally-
people
it's
knocking
more
on
of
the
a
door,
service,
I'm
yeah.
gonna buy my saddle, here's your
Right,
money.
yeah.
That's retail.
I like it. I like it a lot.
I like we just leave
I
it
just,
alone.
I just
and
don't
do
want it to be
Just
a
like
buy
the
right,
people-
that's all.
You what?
Just leave it like it is now.
Can't you say
No
as
doubt.
long as he makes it himself, it's not stuff that he brings in, like,
Right.
don't we have that for the sculptor, that he has to make it?
Right.
Yeah.
You put that
You
in
guys,
there,
if you
that
put,
he has to make it himself.
No.
if we include a
He's selling
definition
other items.
that includes retail, then retail is a part of the definition for anybody coming forward for the use permit. I think it needs to be explained and as a part of the process for the application for a use permit. And they, at that point, have to explain to what degree their retail component of their business is gonna look like. Is it gonna be a storefront? Is it gonna be online? Is it gonna be mail order only? Is it gonna have traffic? Is it gonna have deliveries? I
Well,
think
to
that-
be honest, there's a lot of people who have home-based businesses that do internet sales.
Sure.
That,
But you're opening this up as a retail, that it could be the next guy could open up a store.
right, I mean.
If you say that.
So, Chris,
I
you're on a
understand
roll.
what you're
Keep
saying,
going.
but you just can't,
Go
we
ahead,
can't
Chris, I'll second it real quick.
regulate
All right.
that.
I make a motion, we deny
We don't
RZ
have the power.
1509.
I second it.
So we will not have, okay, so we got a motion on the floor by Chris, second by Garrell. So, which means there's just no definition for equine garment fabrication.
That's
So
what you're
each time they come up,
We don't know
each
enough
definition is
to
going to be
define it.
different.
Well, RZ
Yeah.
1508
Yeah,
does,
fine, fine. Okay. We got a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
Gary was saying, what were you
Are
saying?
you good?
about RZO?
I'm saying that you really have a definition in RZ 1508.
Right, limited
which-
to the fabrication and wholesale distribution of blankets, saddles, halters, and other similar garments.
We just,
Which we
denied
didn't
that.
strike that.
oh
one.
yeah, we didn't strike that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Done.
All right.
Wait, what did you just say?
We denied 08.
Well, by
RZ work.
denying that,
There's
you're
still a
keeping the
use permit.
So we are
Deleted.
keeping that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
That's
we're
fine.
keeping 08 and not 09.
Right.
No, we struck 08.
No,
No.
we struck deleting
We,
the
so,
use permit.
so there's
Oh.
still a use permit.
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Did we vote?
All those,
Not yet.
are we good?
Yeah, we voted on
Okay.
it, yeah.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous.
It's a party eye.
So now, do we have a motion for a dismissal?
I think we want to stay around.
Well,
for a
hang
while.
on some more.
Who bought the beer?
Good motion?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Oh, no.